marked by the enemy. The night smelled like iron and wet leaves, the kind of cold that crawled under armor and bit bone. Wolves crashed through brush and bodies. The ground churned to dark paste under paws and boots. I ducked a swipe that whistled over my head, felt the sting of a claw graze my cheek, and drove my knife up in a tight arc. A gray wolf dropped without a sound. Another lunged. I pivoted, let momentum carry him past, and kicked the back of his knee. He stumbled. Leora's spear flashed and finished what I started. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." I wiped my cheek with the back of my wrist and scanned the ridge. "Stay close and keep your left hand free." "You always say that right before something awful." "Then you know to listen." Her laugh was quick and thin, nerves wrapped in habit. She wore leather light enough to run in, hair braided tight, a smear of someone else's blood streaking her jaw. She kept one palm braced on my shoulder whenever we paused, a tether in a field that wanted to scatter us. The line buckled near the creek, our defenders pushed back by a dark wave cresting again and again with cruel precision. "Rhea," I reached inward. "With me." My wolf surged up, fierce and hot, slipping strength into my muscles. The world sharpened. I could hear the wet hitch of a wounded wolf's breath under the oak, the snap of a twig to my right, the exact place a foot would land before it did. Rhea pressed hard against my ribs, impatient to fully break free. "Left gap," she growled. "Split their flank before they circle." "On it." I sprinted toward the weakest point. Two dark shapes barreled for Leora. I intercepted the first at the shoulder, spun, and cut the second across the muzzle. Teeth snapped from my wrist. I shoved the spear haft into the open mouth and twisted. He gagged, stumbled. Leora yanked the shaft free and thrust again, fast and sure. "Don't fall behind. Try and make me." We moved like we had trained. Two fighters sharing one breath, no space for error. Claws raked my forearm. I answered with steel. The clearing became a tunnel of choices. Step here or die. Duck now or bleed later. A howl rose high and long, and the line rippled with panic that traveled faster than news. I cut it where I saw it, yanking a boy back into formation by the collar. "Hold the oak." My voice carried without effort. "If you break there, you feed them the valley." "I can't feel my leg." "You'll feel death less." I shoved him into place. "Move." He moved. Fear is a language every pack understands. A figure stood above the creek, still while the world bled around him. Even without the stories, I would have known him. Broad shoulders, bare forearms veined like stone, hair dark enough to swallow light. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. A tilt of his head, a flick of two fingers, and men obeyed as if instinct were a command they couldn't disobey. Darius Blackthorn. Even his name felt heavy in my mouth, as if vowels had to pull weight to carry it. He watched the battle with a predator's quiet, measuring where to cut next. When he moved, it was with the confidence of someone who believed the ground existed to be crossed by him. He took a step and 3 lives changed. He raised a hand and a dozen men shifted to reshape the night. "Don't stare," Rhea snapped. "In death likes eye contact." I'm not staring. I was. My hands tightened around my knives. I hated that he drew my attention the way a fire draws cold hands. He was the story told at tables, the threat used to scare pups into obedience. He leveled houses that sheltered enemies, broke bones to make points, and layered discipline over brutality until the two were indistinguishable. That kind of man doesn't soften. He calcifies. A tall male ghosted to his shoulder, lean and sharp as a blade. A scar kinked the corner of his mouth into something like a permanent smirk. Beta energy, all clipped efficiency and watchful cruelty. "They'll break on the left if we press." His voice carried between roars. "Give the signal." "Push them." Darius's gaze never wavered from the line. "Split the oak and flood the ridge." The beta smiled like he'd been given a favorite toy. "With pleasure." Kyle. The name came with a taste of old fear. He pivoted, shouted orders like strikes, and the enemy shifted with terrifying unity. Pressure crushed our left. Wolves slipped past defenders and arrows sang into our rear guard. Panic, fluttered again. I waded through it, punching it down with commands and example. Across the creek, a woman moved through ruin with unnerving calm. Pale braid to her waist, healer's satchel cinched tight, hands quick and neat as she bound a wound, eyes like winter water. She looked up once toward Darius, gaze lingering a breath too long before smoothing back to professional stillness. Era. Ambition clung to her like a second perfume under the yarrow and mint. Selene, Leora's fingers found my elbow. We're going to get swallowed if they flood the ridge. They won't, I lied, for her sake and maybe for mine. Hold the line, then cut right on my count. You and your count. You love them when they keep you alive. She made a face and braced. We charged the left before it caved, Rhea thrumming with eager violence. I hit a black wolf hard enough to rattle teeth, rolled, came up low, and slashed at the tendon behind another's knee. He crumpled with a scream that wasn't human or wolf, something caught between shift and flesh. A tan wolf lunged for my throat. I jammed the hilt into his mouth and twisted. Leora stepped over my hip to spear another trying to flank us. You okay? Ask me when we see sunrise. You're an optimist, I'm stubborn. Same thing on a good day. We fought without thinking about heroics, only angles and weight and breath. Rhea wanted out fully, claws scratching under my skin, vision sharpening until light and movement separated into threads I could yank. Let me, she pressed. I'll tear the throat from the one who stares as if we're a problem to solve. Not yet. I needed speed and hands. Shifting in a crush could be suicide. Save it for when we can run after. After what? After we refuse to die. She snorted, proud and wild. There she is. The roar came again, closer, deeper, pulling at muscle and marrow. I knew the moment it landed in every spine around me, because movement stuttered, then resynced to a rhythm that wasn't ours. Across the creek, Darius had shed just enough of humanity for his wolf to ripple under his skin, teeth lengthened, eyes bright in the moonlight. He looked like a god, carved by a culture that remembered what fear was for. I forced my gaze away and found a young wolf from our pack, wedged under the oak, a bolt jutting from his side. He scrabbled at the shaft with paws that shook. I knelt hard, snapped the shaft close to the skin to stop it catching, and dragged him toward a dip in the roots where arrows would miss. Leora covered me, spear flicking in tight movements, mouth set in a hard line. Hold here. I pressed the boy's head down gently. Breathe shallow. Don't pull. It hurts. I know. He blinked at me with eyes too clear. I don't want to die in the mud. Then don't. I pressed his cheek to the bark. Listen to voices that sound like orders and ignore the ones that sound like apologies. His throat bobbed as he obeyed, breath going thin and controlled. Good. I spun up and caught a blade on my forearm. Pain flared. I shoved it away and cut the man above the knee. He dropped. I finished him cleanly and wished briefly that I were the kind of person who didn't appreciate efficiency. Back to the ridge, Leora tugged my sleeve. We're being funneled. Do something about it. Working on it. We made for the high ground. Every step cost more will than muscle. Enemy wolves drove us where they wanted, not with brute force, but with math. Kale choreographed from the edge like a conductor, head cocked, attention predatory and bored all at once. My skin prickled before I understood why. The scent cut through blood and smoke, crisp and impossible to ignore. Frost on iron, the clean edge of steel left in snow. My attention snapped across the churned clearing as if yanked. Darius had turned too, head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring. He wasn't looking at the line anymore. Don't. Rhea's growl hit the base of my skull. Turn away. Now. I tried. Something in me refused. He took a step down into the creek. Water surged around his boots. Two of his men moved to cover him without being told. He ignored them, eyes fixed on a point I didn't want him to choose. Leora followed my stare and blanched. No. Eyes front, I forced mine down. We don't hand him our fear like a gift. He's coming this way. He always comes for something. How comforting. It wasn't meant to be. The pressure on our left spiked again. I shoved into it because there was nowhere else to go that didn't end in teeth. A wolf barreled at me, jaws wide. I let him hit, used his weight to turn his body, and slammed his skull into the oak. He dropped. Another tried to take my back. Leora's spear punched through his shoulder. He shrieked and folded. A leather-braced fighter stepped from the melee, knife loose in his hand, eyes bright with mean interest. He took me in the way a butcher looks at a cut he wants to savor. Yield. Not my hobby. We collided. He was quick and strong, but his footwork got greedy when he smelled advantage. I let him overcommit, slid inside his reach, and raked a blade across his ribs. He hissed and came back grinning. You hit better than most. You bleed like the rest. We circled in mud up to our ankles, breath tearing our chests. He feinted left, cut right. Steel kissed steel. He went for my throat. I parried and shoved him away with a boot to his hip. He landed hard, rolled, and came up laughing. Again. Find someone else to entertain you, and I like you, you'll hate me soon, I doubt it. And then you're slow. A shadow crossed us like a cloud swallowing moonlight. The leather-braced man glanced past my shoulder. His grin faltered. He stepped back without meaning to. I knew what I'd see before I turned. Darius stood at the rim of our chaos, very close now, very still. Warriors shifted aside without awareness, clearing a wide circle for nothing but his presence. The knight threw a thin line of silver along his jaw. His eyes were too bright to belong to a man and too controlled to belong to a beast. Every nerve in my body lit. Move. Rhea shoved my legs. Run. My calves refused to listen. Stupid, traitorous muscles dazzled by danger. He didn't glance at Leora, at Kale hovering just beyond his shoulder, at Era drifting nearer with that chilly curiosity. He watched me like a problem he intended to solve with the simplest, cleanest answer available. Leora took a breath that sounded like a scraped knee. Selene. I see him. We need to go. We will. When? When there's a path that isn't right through him. Convenient. It's the only kind left. Kyle's focus cut to me with the tight amusement of a man who enjoys puzzles he knows he can take apart. He spoke without looking at Darius. She's the reason you changed the line. Hold the ridge. Darius's tone didn't rise. Clear the space. The air shifted. Enemy wolves peeled away from our immediate fight as if pulled by a tide. My chest went cold. The line fell back to give him room to do whatever he wanted next. He didn't reach for a blade. He didn't shift. He stepped forward, one heavy, inevitable stride at a time. Rhea. I clawed for sense. On my count, hard right into the birches. No cover. Enough to vanish and circle. He will follow. He can't follow everywhere at once. He is not everywhere. He is here. Brilliant. Thank you. Not a compliment. Era paused at the edge of the circle, hands tucked against her satchel strap, face smooth. Her gaze flicked from Darius to me, and something tightened at the corners of her mouth. Not fear, not grief. A small, careful resentment, folded and stored like a blade wrapped in cloth. Do you need a poultice on your arm? She let the question float, a test no one was expected to pass. I need you to keep your distance. I kept my eyes on Darius. And pray for your own. You pray for yours, girl. Kale didn't bother to face me. You're going to need more than herbs. Darius closed the last of the distance to something that felt indecent. The heat coming off him was its own weather. The smell of frost and smoke crowded every other scent out of my head. He wasn't touching me. He didn't need to. The air between us changed shape to accommodate him, leaving me less to breathe. You always run toward the worst of it, Leora's voice wavered and held. Don't do it this time. I don't intend to run toward anything. Good. I intend to refuse to be moved. That's not better. It's the only thing that feels like me. Rhea pressed hard against my skin, all raised fur and bared teeth, terrified and thrilled in equal measure. She hated him. She wanted to test herself against him. She wanted to bite until we tasted victory or broken pride. Pick a direction, she warned, because we can't be fear and hunger at once without tearing in half. Then we pick survival. Survival sometimes looks like surrender. Not tonight. She bristled, satisfied for now. Darius's attention held. The world narrowed to the rough bark at my back, Leora's breath to my left, Kale's stillness like a drawn bowstring, Ira's frost glittering at the rim, and him. Always him. Not because I wanted it, but because the night itself seemed to tilt to take his shape. I squared my shoulders and showed my teeth. If you want me to break, you'll be disappointed. You don't bend until the right weight is applied. His gaze traveled my face, not lascivious, not kind, a craftsman assessing material. Noted. You don't get to assess me like lumber. I assess everything I intend to take through to its end. You assume you get an end? I don't assume. He shifted slightly. The smallest redistribution of balance that said he was comfortable everywhere because everywhere belonged to him. I decide. Arrogance looks ugly in moonlight. Truth keeps the same face in any light. Kale's smirk crookened farther. Leora hissed a breath. Ira's fingers whitened where they clenched the satchel strap. A cry rose from the center of the field. The line lurched and held, then slid back another terrifying yard. Darius didn't look. He didn't need to. His pack moved without asking for his eyes. I adjusted my grip on the knives, feeling the bite of leather against palm. A steady, normal pain in a night gone strange. He watched the movement and the corner of his mouth twitched with the knowledge of how many times he'd disarmed fighters like me. I hated him for that calm certainty more than I hated him for the blood on his skin. Rhea, I breathed to a count of 3. 3 is late, 2. 1. Run. We sprang right, hard and low toward the birches into shadow and broken ground. Leora sprinted at my shoulder, mud sucked at our boots. A wolf slid into our path, yellow eyes wide with startle. I planted a foot, vaulted off his back and landed rolling. Leora ducked under a swipe and stabbed upward into a rib cage. We hit the trees together, breath tearing, hearts violent. Behind us no roar came to pin us in place. No order cracked like a whip to drop us in the mud. Silence followed for 3 steps, 4, 5. Hope tried to lift its head and I cracked it with the heel of my palm before it could get ideas. We were not safe. We were moving. Branches clawed at arms and faces, the birches thinned after 30 paces. The ground rose toward a saddle of rock. If we crested, we could slide down the other side and vanish into scrub and foxholes only our pack knew. Rhea stretched long in my chest, ready to flood me the second I asked. Almost, Leora panted. Almost. Don't say it. I'll think it very loudly then. Better. We reached the saddle and the night changed pressure, the way air does before lightning. Leora stumbled a half step and glanced back despite everything we've ever learned about not looking behind at a hunter. I didn't need to. I felt him in my bones. Leora swore under her breath. He's right there. I turned. Darius stood at the base of the birches we'd fled, not winded, not surprised, not even annoyed. He simply existed in the exact place that turned my run into a circle. Men moved at his flanks, then stopped on a small, unspoken signal that kept a clear channel between us. Kale's attention sharpened into something like anticipation. Era's expression shuddered to cool satisfaction that made no sense at all. Rhea pressed the back of her skull against my ribs like a trapped animal. He sees you. I know. Not like others see. Like a hunter selecting where to press his teeth. I know that too. Then choose, Selene. I lifted my chin and met his gaze from the saddle of rock. Breath loud in my ears, knives steady in my hands. Leora, a warm line at my side. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The path that wasn't right through him had just closed, and the night knew it. We stood there while the creek ran and men bled and the moon dragged itself up another inch, while wolves snarled and arrows sang, and someone cried a name that ended without an answer. He didn't move. I didn't move. The moment stretched thin, bright as a wire, and hummed underfoot like something about to snap. "Two choices," Rhea whispered. "Fight him now and die here, or hold and make him show you why he thinks he deserves your attention. He doesn't deserve anything. Then make him earn your hatred properly." I breathed once, deep enough to steady the shake in my legs. Leora's fingers brushed my elbow. Darius's focus did not waver. "Fine," I murmured for Rhea and no one else. "Let him come to me." Wind rattled the birches while we stared each other down across the saddle. Leora's breath ran quick beside me. Down below, Kyle lifted 2 fingers, and his wolves shifted to hold a wide ring open, as if this were ceremony, not slaughter. "You're going to walk away," I called, forcing calm into my voice, "or you'll crawl." "You'll come down," Darius answered, not loud, not soft, just certain. "Or I'll come up and teach you the difference between deciding and being decided. Try it. Not try, do." Rhea pressed against my skin, claws prickling my palms from the inside. "Break left. Force him to follow. Make mistakes expensive." On my mark, I slid 1 foot back, felt the lip of rock, counted breath. Now. We launched. I cut hard left toward a narrow chute. Darius came up the slope like he had been waiting to stretch his legs. I threw a knife for his thigh to make him shift weight. His hand snapped and the blade vanished into his grip. He flicked it point down into the soil and kept coming. "Not fair," Leora muttered, angling to his flank. "Who catches knives like that?" "The kind who thinks gravity works for him. Keep to his blind side. He doesn't have one. Make one." Kyle lounged at the base of the rocks, arms loose, eyes bright. "Bring her down clean. Alpha wants her pretty." "Pretty doesn't survive what's coming." Leora lunged. Her spear kissed Darius's ribs. He twisted and the point skittered along leather. He caught the shaft in one hand. Leora yanked. Nothing. He didn't even brace. His eyes stayed on me. "Stay back," I warned. "Not a chance." He shoved, not at Leora, but at the ground. The spear hopped out of her hands like it preferred him. He reversed it as if he'd trained with it for years and set the butt on stone, casual as leaning on a rail. He tipped it off the rock. Kale caught it without looking. "You steal my weapons," Leora panted. "Rude." "You'll live." He still didn't look at her. Era stood behind Kyle with her satchel tight to her ribs, pale braid hanging straight despite the wind. Her gaze tracked Darius, then cut to me, cool as river ice. "You can surrender," Darius said. "I prefer restraint to ruin." "How considerate." "It isn't kindness." "Good. I was worried you might go soft." Something like humor tugged his mouth and vanished. He closed the last distance. I drew the second knife and sent it for his face because disrespect changes a man's angle. He turned his head a fraction, and the blade whispered past his ear into birch. He didn't slow. "Rhea," I warned, "now." I let her flood my limbs, not a full shift. Claws lengthened. Heat roared up my spine. The world sharpened until every edge could be cut. I went low for his knee, letting him read a fake for his belly. He trapped my wrist and twisted. Pain sang bright. I rolled with it and whipped my elbow for his jaw. He caught that too. Palm hot around the hinge of my arm. "Yield. Eat your own teeth." He shoved. I slid on scree, caught myself, surged back in with everything ugly boys had taught me in training yards when they assumed Beta's daughters broke easy. I aimed at joints and throats. He dismantled every angle like he was bored of the lesson. It was like fighting a door that had decided to be a wall. Leora darted for his hamstring. He shifted an inch and her blade met air. Kale flowed across her path without touching her, a fence that moved when she moved. "Leave her," Darius said. Regretfully, Kyle answered and shadowed Leora to keep her penned. Rhea snarled, "Oh, he's playing with you." "I know." "Make him stop." "I'm trying." I raked for his eye. He let my nails scrape brow, then folded my hand back to my chest. His other hand closed around my throat. Not a choke, a hold. Pressure measured to the exact point my body recognized authority and bared its teeth at the recognition. "Let go." "No." You think you can own me with your hands. I can correct you with my hands. Ownership is a different lesson. Try teaching it. I am. I tore free on a burst of wolf strength, slid under his arm, carved for the tendon above his heel. My blade kissed leather, not flesh. I cut for his ribs. He angled his forearm, and shock rattled my wrist as steel met bone. Enough, Kale called, impatient. Just take her. She fights, Darius answered, still even. Let her finish the lie she tells herself about winning. This isn't a lie, I said through rough breath. It's a promise you won't like. Promises are fantasies with teeth. Then bleed. He gave ground 2 steps, a gift meant to teach me how it felt to choose pace. When I adjusted to that rhythm, he changed it. His hand cut under mine. My knife left my grip. His hip knocked my balance. Sky flipped. Stone knocked breath from my lungs. He didn't follow me down. He stood over me with the moon cutting his jaw in silver, eyes bright and too sure. Yield. One more. No. Rhea snapped. Not like this. He'll change how you remember yourself. I'd rather remember fighting, then fight smarter. I rolled to my feet, slow and open-palmed, feigning recalibration. He watched with a patience that could stand all night and never think it wasted. I edged right, feigned a slip to invite pursuit. He didn't take it. He lifted his chin a half-inch, tendon tight under skin. A throat a man like him would never give. You can come in rage, he said, or because I ask you to. Either way you come. I'll come with your blood on my tongue, or that can be arranged. He moved. Not a lunge. A decision. He crossed the yard as if measuring floorboards in a house he built. I swung for his temple. He let it pass close, stepped through my guard, caught both wrists in one hand, and pressed me to the rock. Not crushing, caging, the precise edge where limits get chosen for you. Look at me. Go to hell. You'll find me there. His hand slid from my wrists to my jaw, firm, impersonal, turning my face like a craftsman finding grain. His eyes were wrong at this distance. Wolf gold poured over a man's focus, storm held in glass. Rhea, I breathed. Oh, don't you dare. I am made for teeth. If you yield to him, you yield to me. We yield to nothing. We yield to mating, she threw back, shocked by her own truth. I hate it. Then hate it with me. I do. I drove my knee. He blocked without changing his expression. Nails for his face. He leaned aside, denying me the satisfaction of scar. His weight held me, not obscene, just physics refusing to pretend it wasn't strong. Last time, yield. Make me. He bared his teeth and his wolf stepped closer to the skin. As you wish. His mouth lowered to the juncture of my neck and shoulder. I wrenched, thumbed for his eyes. His grip cinched. Heat flooded off him, made it hard to drag air under it. His breath brushed my skin. Pain tore bright across my world. The bite broke everything. Fire slammed through nerves like lightning hitting iron. A sound ripped out of me, part snarl, part broken prayer. The first rush was white and blinding. Then something else slid under it. A force not mine. Flooding paths that had only ever carried me. Not touch. Invasion. Intimate as blood. Mine. A voice thundered inside my skull. Not with ears. Through bone and marrow. Through parts I'd never let anyone close to. I slammed against it with everything I was. No, I hurled back, inside, outside, everywhere. I am not yours. You are. Another tone layered under his, deeper, rougher, edged in fur. Not words so much as meaning. A claim spoken in the language wolves use when they press their muzzles to what belongs to them. Rhea shrieked and lunged. Not at him, at me. Because there was no one else to hit in a war fought inside ribs. Stop, I begged her. Don't make it easier for him. He is the end of hunger, she keened. I hate him, I want him. I want to rip his throat and then lie down on it. Fight, I shoved hatred and defiance into her body and mine. She took it, shook under it, and braced. Blood slicked my tongue. Copper heat. For a breath I thought it was mine and was disgusted that some dark part liked it. His teeth withdrew. His mouth stayed on my skin like a brand cooling into shape. A second heartbeat joined mine in my neck. Not his pulse against me, but his presence inside me. A second shadow under skin. "Breathe," he ordered, and the word hit the new thread and pulled. Air rushed in against my will. My gaze snapped to his and found gold drowning in black. If night had eyes, they would look like that when it decided to devour a village. "Get out of my head. No, acclimate. I will tear you out. You will bruise yourself on me for a time. Then you'll stop when you prefer the ache to the absence. I prefer nothing about you. Liar." Rhea lunged and smashed herself bloody on a wall without edges. His wolf unfurled inside the link. Massive, old, sure. A weight that bent instinct the way wind bends grass. "Name," he demanded inside. "Selene." "Rhea," he acknowledged, and my wolf froze. Panting, hatred and hunger, tangled. "And you," I forced. "What do I call the thing I'll never invite into my bed?" "Fen?" Fen pressed along Rhea with a possessive rumble that made my stomach flip with fury and something I refused to name. The battle's noise crashed back all at once. I heard too clearly. A warrior's wet breath, 2 trees away. Leora's choked inhale. Kale's low curse of admiration. Era whispering an herb she didn't need because the man she wanted intact had chosen to stay unbandaged. Darius lifted his head. My blood streaked his mouth. Rhea snarled and something else in me shivered like betrayal. He looked down at me, not softening, not apologizing. "You are marked. Fight if you like. It does not change. You think this wins you anything? It wins me everything. Or you're a monster. I am an alpha." His hand released my wrists. He didn't step back. The bond tugged like a hook set deep, like tied on an ankle. I locked my knees and refused to sway. He watched the refusal with patient interest, as if cataloging the exact pressure it would take to break it. "Back away from her," Leora called from the lip, spear in her hands again. "Now." Kyle's mouth curved. "Brave enough to be fun, not smart enough to be a problem? I like you. Touch me and lose fingers and show me." "Enough," Darius cut, and his pack froze like a flock under hawk shadow. He didn't look at Kale. "Hold the ring. Secure the friend." "You're not taking her," Leora threw, chin high. "You dragged me over my own dead body." "If that's the ground you prefer," Kale shrugged, "I can accommodate." "Try it." "Oh, I will." "Don't," I snapped at Leora. The bond hummed when Kale shifted toward her. "Stay where you are. Make them waste men to move you." "I'm not leaving you." "You won't be allowed to." "I know." Darius glanced at Leora once, assessment only, then locked back on me as if his eyes had never strayed. "Walk," he ordered, and the word hit the link like a fist into a pool. My heel moved and I stopped it, every muscle seized. Rhea dug in like a wolf meeting a collar for the first time. "Do not command me. I already did. I won't obey." "You will. I prefer to avoid spectacle. Walk. Make me." He adjusted presence the way storms adjust pressure. The bond pulled. Not gentle, not cruel. My body betrayed me with one step, a jerk of instinct older than my bloodline. His will had learned my bones and started rearranging the furniture. "Stop," I told my legs, and they stopped. Sweat prickled down my spine. His gaze warmed 1 degree, interested. "Better than most. We'll find the line, then you'll stop searching for it. You think I'm your pet. I think you're mine." The raw possessiveness made Leora curse and Era close her eyes for a breath too long. "She'll go into shock," Era said, voice smooth. "Mate bites can do that. She needs water, salt, a binding. If you want her on her feet, use the tools in front of you." "Bind it," Darius said. "No herbs that dull, no tricks." Era came with efficient hands. Her fingers were cool at the torn skin, impersonal, fast. She tied a neat knotted bandage and stepped back. Her eyes met mine for a heartbeat, resentment, and a flicker of pity thrown away before it could shame her. Hold still. My leash keeps me docile. It keeps you breathing. There are worse lines to wear. Are there? You would know. She swallowed whatever else she wanted and moved aside. Let Leora go, I said, daring a command into space he owned. No, she comes. You don't get to lose your anchor yet. I want you in the shape you fight in. I won't fight for you. You will fight near me, that will do. Rhea made a low, confused sound as if that shift in wording was a thing she understood. I snarled at her. She snarled back. Both of us burned thin. You haven't asked what I want. I don't ask children playing with knives if they prefer leather or silk for the sheath. I decide, and they learn why my choice was better. You think I'll thank you. You will stop lying about what you hate. I hate you. You hate that you're not indifferent. Kyle bracketed Leora without touching. She spat in the dirt. He laughed. Walk, Darius told me again, calm as gravity. Don't make me lift you. Save your strength for things that deserve it. Name one thing. Everything beyond this circle. He gestured to forest, creek, dead, living. The 100 choices waiting that had nothing to do with these 3 steps. Walk. The bond tugged. I moved because I chose to, and if that fiction saved a scrap of dignity, it was mine to spend. He watched and gave a single nod, like I had passed a test he invented seconds ago. Rage licked up my throat. Don't look at me like that, like you know me. I will look at you in all the ways men refuse when they fear what they own. You will learn the difference between possession and protection under a hand that doesn't tremble. I don't want your protection, you'll have it anyway. Even if I don't ask. Especially then, that's not love. It isn't meant to be. We descended 3 steps. The link thrummed, a string stretched too tight between ribs. With every shift of his weight, I felt an echo. With every breath, a ghost of his threaded mine. It was nauseating and intoxicating, a poison I might drink again just to prove I could survive it twice. Leora fell in at my shoulder, chin high, eyes furious. I've got you. I know, if he makes you stumble, I cut his legs at the knee. You'll have to jump to reach, Kale observed. I'll admire the attempt. Shut up. Make me. Era paced on Darius's other side like a moon that refused orbit. She didn't look at me again. Her attention folded inward, counting herbs, blood loss, pride, and the ache of watching a thing you want settle on someone else's shoulders. The creek kept up its busy work while the forest held breath around men, moving at the pace of one man's will. Owls watched from high branches, with grave curiosity. At the base of the saddle, I stopped to prove I could. The bond yanked harder. I planted my feet and rode the pull. Better, Darius observed. And you react, then you choose. That order will save you. You think I want saving. You want defiance. It will give you the illusion you prefer until you're ready for truth. What truth? You already know it. Try me. You are mine. The words stamped like hot iron, not shouted, not sweet. And I do not apologize for taking what is mine. Keep not apologizing. I plan to refuse forgiveness very loudly. Good, I prefer a woman whose hatred burns clean. His hand lifted, the ring tightened. I went with it because the path that wasn't through him didn't exist yet. Rhea pressed hard against my bones and watched Fenn's shadow pace ours. Both wolves quiet, in that way that means the violence has only changed rooms. The world tilted around the bite. Sound thinned and sharpened at once, as if the night were holding its breath while a blade hovered over a string. I tasted iron and heat. Rhea slammed herself against my ribs, all teeth and hate. Fenn answered from the other side of the new thread with a low thunder that had no beginning and no end. Mine. Not yours. You are. The circle widened without a word. Men stepped back because he had stepped forward. Kyle leaned at the rim like a blade propped against stone, eyes bright. Era hovered beyond him, hands tight on her satchel strap, the quiet rage of a healer who could sew anything but what she wanted. Leora took a step toward me. Kale moved without touching her. She froze, breath shaking. "Don't," I told her. Later. "When?" she breathed. "When he sleeps." "He doesn't sleep." Darius's mouth lifted from my skin. My blood streaked his jaw. He looked down at me without softness or apology. "Walk." My heel moved. I stopped it. The bond hummed like a taut string. "Do not command me. I already did, and I won't obey it. You will, or I will carry you. Decide your dignity." I tasted fury and swallowed it whole. I took one step because I chose to, because that was the lie I could live with for now. His gaze noted the decision without triumph, like a craftsman noticing a beautiful flaw. "Bring the friend over my dead body," Leora snapped. "One path," Kale said, amused. "I prefer the one with fewer stains." "Don't touch her," I warned. "No need," Kale said, matching her pace so precisely it felt like a trap laid by geometry. Era moved to my other side. "Water," she said. A skin appeared, she offered it. Her fingers brushed mine and flinched from the heat the bond pushed up my arm. I drank because my throat was ash and pride without breath is performative stupidity. The water hit cold, sharp, honest. "You'll live," Era murmured. "You look disappointed. You look taller than your wound, easier to sew." We moved through ruin, bodies like discarded cloaks. Wolves limped. Names were called that would never answer. The night pretended to be indifferent and failed. At the creek, Darius paused long enough for Kale to lay logs. He looked at the ridge where my pack still held. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He measured what he would take now, and what he would take tomorrow. A boy burst from the altar, mud to his knees, eyes wide. He saw me, and the sound my name made in his mouth broke. "Go," I told him. "Live. We can pull you back if we hit the ravine and circle. If you can't, I won't run. He will still be there." "Monster." The boy threw at Darius like a pebble at a cliff. "Alpha," Darius corrected, mild. "Run." Spears lifted in reflex. 2 fingers from Darius and the spears dropped. The boy fled. The moment set a tone. Function over cruelty, which can look like mercy if you stand far enough away. "Efficient," Kale observed. "Useful," Darius said. "Same sin, different sermon," Leora muttered. We crossed. Cold climbed my boots. On the far bank, a path shouldered out of the trees, dirt tamped flat by 1,000 deliberate feet. Torches burned steady in iron brackets. Claw marks at shoulder height scored tree trunks. Ash rubbed into the grooves to make a language only they cared to read. "This is where the polite welcome ends," Leora whispered. It ended at the bite. She looked at my bandage and away. The mark throbbed. The bond tugged like tide on bone. Rhea paced, furious, afraid, proud enough to call it something else. "I will not bow," she said. "You will not break," I told her. "If he makes us," and he doesn't make us, I lied. And we both knew it and agreed to pretend a little longer. 3 men stood under a bell. They drew taller when they saw Darius, then flinched when they saw me. "Report," Darius said. "South line held. 2 dead. 4 broken. East raiders pushed back to the hills. Take the bodies home. No wailing. Work first." "Yes, Alpha." The man's eyes stuck to my throat. Darius's attention brushed him like a knife laid flat. The eyes jerked away. "Open," Darius said. The bell spoke. Ahead, a gate groaned. Iron against oak. A beast waking. "Stand straighter," Era murmured, without looking at me. "You walk into wolves. Weakness reads louder than blood. I'll slouch to annoy you, and it won't, it will annoy them. Then I stitch you again. Compassion looks wrong on you. Habit, like pride, neither means love." Darius lifted a hand and the column stopped. The gate loomed 40 paces ahead, iron-banded oak, wolf heads hammered at the hinges. "Listen," Darius said, easy voice carrying like weather. "You have eyes. Use them. She is marked." The ripple that moved through them wasn't sound. It was air, learning a new pressure. "She is our enemy," he continued. "She is also mine. Both truths stand. You will hold both." His gaze slid right, Left, down the line, touched Era like frost, glanced at Kale and met a grin, landed on me last, and did not soften. You will not touch her without my order. You will not insult her within my hearing. If you test this, I will break your test. And you. A breath hissed between someone's teeth. Darius turned his head. The hiss died a coward's death. Clean, Kale murmured. They heard you. They always do. You enjoy that, I said, because contempt needed somewhere to sleep. I enjoy order. Breaking bones is often the fastest map to it. You'll break more. Only if they make me. That's a lot of making. That's a lot of men. The gate yawned. Inside, courtyards through firelight. Leather oil, smoke breathed out. Wolves in human skin moved with the weary competence of those who had earned sleep and might be denied it. 2 minutes, Darius told Era, still not looking. Outside my door. I need more. 2. She swallowed the argument. 2. She angled me toward a steaming trough. Leora moved to follow. Kale shadowed her with an arm that didn't touch and still blocked everything. She stays with me, Darius said. I'm not your prisoner, Leora snapped. You are, Kale said, almost cheerful. But you can be my favorite if you behave. I'd rather be your problem. You already are. Door on your right inside. You get a bed because he's generous. Don't make me carry you. Era pushed a cup into my hand. Drink, salt, rinse again, hands in the basin. You give orders well, and I have to. Men like him break things and expect me to find thread. Hate him. I hate easy targets. He isn't one. Try harder. I do. The water burned. The salt stung. The basin clouded red, then cleared. I refused to look at my reflection where the mark would sit. Era's fingers tightened the bandage with quick efficiency. Your wolf will settle if you breathe slow, she said. My wolf isn't the problem, and she will be, not tonight, tomorrow, when the bond pretends to be comfort. You don't know me. I know this, she said, and tied the knot. Done. Darius waited at the base of a stair that climbed the inner wall to an iron-studded door. He hadn't moved while I washed. He had simply stood until the world made room for him. Later, he told Era. I'll be waiting, she said, and left because women like her always come back to the worst work. Darius, I called toward the passage where Leora vanished. She's not livestock. She is leverage, which means fed, watered, guarded, and not broken by idiots. My version of kindness. Walk, and I'll move her. You will ask, he said, offering the word like a dare. I won't. You will when you learn which battles deserve you. The bond tugged. I climbed because I refused to be carried. The hall at the top was long as a beast's spine, banners dark, table stained with years of meat and counsel. Guards at the far end didn't shift and still managed to be ready for everything. Listen, Darius said, one more rule. I don't follow rules, you already are. Learn this and bleed less while you test the others. Do not run in my house. Do not hide. Stand when I enter. Look when I speak. Answer. And when you lie, lie so well I want to hear it again. You think I'm staying and you are because I want you. It doesn't occur to you to want anything else, and it does. I choose not to. He stepped closer until heat erased distance. Rhea braced, trembling. Furious that trembling existed. Hold, I told her. Fen is near, she whispered. He smells like winter. He will step on our throat and call it a lesson. We'll bite his foot. I want to, she said, and hated that it sounded like prayer. A messenger sprinted in from the far door and remembered to bow too late. Alpha, north wall. A mark. Speak, circle of thorns. Sun inside. Fresh. Not ours. Rogues. Era's voice cut from the passage. Not rogues. Kale drifted in with the same lazy promise of violence. Hillborn, thorns and suns. They prefer trouble to winning. Your timing is poor, Darius told the boy. Your news isn't. Show me. The boy fled. Darius looked at me for one breath, then longer. He took my chin and tipped my face until the link thrummed under his fingers. You will come. No, you will. I won't leave you for the house to sniff. You don't own my steps. I own your attention. If I walk away, it comes with me. Arrogant, accurate. He turned. The bond yanked. I held for 5 beats and then moved because staying hurt more. We crossed a courtyard. The night sharpened. The north wall loomed, stone black with old rain. A torch guttered beside a man, pointing with his whole body. "There," he whispered. Because men whisper in the presence of signs even when they shouldn't. Fresh lines scratched into mortar at knee-height, circle, thorn hooks. Crude sun inside. "Inside the yard to carve that," Era said. "Fury, neatest stitches." "Or someone inside wants us to think so," Kale said, almost pleased. "A riddle that cuts." Darius stood very still. Fen lifted his head. Rhea bristled. The bond throbbed like a drum you feel before you hear. He spoke without hurry. "Lock the outer houses, double posts north. No one leaves. No one enters. Search every corridor that smells wrong. Quietly. I want the mouse to think we are slow." "Yes, Alpha." He turned back to me. "Under my roof," he said. "Not a pen. Not a cell. Where I sleep. You expect thanks. I expect you to understand the difference between 30 guards and 1. And I think you prefer the latter, though you'd choke before admitting it. I prefer knives in the dark to your company in the light." "You'll have both," he said, "not a threat, a simple weather report." He tipped his head toward the inner stair. The walls inhaled, chains rattled at the gate. Above us, men leaned to watch and remembered not to. The courtyard drew itself around his steps like a mouth before a bite. "Leora." I hurled across the empty air as if the bond might lend it wings. "Hold." Always came back, faint and flint-hard. "Walk," Darius said, and the command rolled through the new thread like thunder. I stood my ground for a count that tasted like a victory I couldn't keep, then stepped because it was that or be thrown over a shoulder like spoils. We reached the arch. The world beyond belonged to him. The world behind me had started bleaching like bone. Rhea pressed paws against my ribs as if muscle and will could slow stone. Fen paced us with a satisfied rumble that said the first lesson had taken and the next would be worse. "Do not break," I told Rhea. "Do not want," she told me, and we both knew one of those orders would be harder. The iron creaked. Torches made the air taste like hot pennies. Darius lifted 2 fingers and closed them like a hook, catching the last of my stubbornness. "Walk." I went under the gate. Firelight ate the edges of night. The boom of the gate settling into its sockets rolled through stone, through bone, through the thin new cord between us. "Welcome," Darius said, and meant territory. "Not yours," Rhea snarled. "Mine," Fen answered, pleased. The enemy's walls closed behind us, and the night that had watched me for years watched me now from inside a different cage. The hall took the noise we brought in and pressed it flat, as if stone could learn discipline from the wolves who lived inside it. Heat rolled from 2 long hearths, gilding the banners and the edges of old shields. Warriors moved with the stripped-down economy of men who had spilled enough blood to find silence useful. Every glance reached Darius first, slid to the bandage at my throat, and then dropped as if taught. He stopped at the head of the long table without raising his voice or a hand, and the air tightened around the pause he created. I faced him because standing anywhere else would be a different defeat. "You will live under my roof. You will not run in this house or hide inside it. When I enter, you stand. When I speak, you look. You answer. If you lie, do it so well, I ask to hear it again." "Do you rehearse lines like that in the mirror, or do they arrive fully formed with your arrogance?" "I rehearse nothing, I decide. The rules keep my decisions from having to repeat themselves." Rhea bristled behind my ribs, a low growl traveling my spine. "He will push until he finds the thinnest part. Do not show him where it is." I folded my arms over the heat of the bite. "Proximity won't make me yours. It just makes you obvious. Proximity changes outcomes, that is why I chose it." The answer slid through the link before his mouth finished the last word. Fen moved like cold weight under his skin, a shadow stepping forward to place a paw on a line I did not want to cross. Mine. The claim vibrated through bone, intimate as breath stolen in the dark. I forced my jaw to unlock. Kale separated from a pillar with the kind of loose-limbed grace that can start trouble without moving far. He drifted close enough to admire the binding at my throat, a knife's interest sitting behind his grin. "I'm filing a complaint," he said, easy as a man ordering bread. "We dragged an enemy into the main hall and I wasn't allowed to charge admission." "Stand down," Darius answered without looking at him. Kale propped a shoulder against the end of the table, grin unbothered, eyes bright with the pleasure of standing on an edge. He liked edges. He liked watching others meet them more. Ira cut across the hall with a healer's tidy stride and the clean scents of mint and riverstone. Her satchel lay crosswise at her hip. Her gaze grazed Darius first, then me, then settled on the bandage with a small private recoil she smothered in habit. "She's still bleeding. Do you prefer a fever or a corpse?" "Bind it," he said. "No powders that dull, no tricks." "I don't need tricks, I need time and quiet hands." "You have 2 minutes," Kale offered, pleased with himself. Ira ignored him and reached. I caught her wrist before her fingers touched my skin. Conversations around us missed half a beat. "Ask before you touch me." Her pale eyes held mine without flinching. "You want to keep standing or you want to see the floor come up? Choose." Rhea tested the healer's scent and found iron self-control under the herbs. She serves him, not you. But she won't waste thread. "Be quick," I said. Ira's fingers were cool, impersonal, efficient. She traced the edge of the bite with focus I recognized from sharpening a blade. The pressure stung, then settled into an ache that made sense. She pulled the linen tight. Her knot small and practiced, cut the strip clean and stepped back as if every heartbeat already had work assigned. "He marked you properly." The words carried the faint scrape of resentment. "No tearing, no rot. It will hold if you stop lecturing with your shoulders. You admire his technique often. I admire my outcomes," she said. "Eat before you topple. Pride burns more fuel than you have stored." A young warrior in a crude sling came too close and stopped with his jaw working. He stared at the bandage, flinched at Darius, then landed his outrage on me like a boy throwing a stone at a storm. "You brought her into our hall," he blurted, and the tremor in his voice snapped the threat in two. "You wrapped her up like—" Fen shifted and looked through Darius's eyes. The boy's knees hit stone as if the floor had reached for them. The silence held still enough for me to hear his ragged swallow. "You will think quietly," Darius said without changing his tone. "Then you will leave my sight. When your arm is useful again, your mouth may earn keeping." The boy scrambled away. The hall remembered itself and moved. Darius turned toward a heavy door near the rear wall. He didn't need to gesture. The bond tugged, and I let it take one step before stealing the next. The door swung in, iron studs catching firelight and scattering it. The room smelled of leather and cold smoke and a clean winter note that belonged only to him. A wide bed under a narrow window slit. A rack of weapons honed to a consistent edge. Gloves on a table, palms shiny and cracked from years of work. A cloak heavy enough to keep out bad weather and argument. "You'll sleep here? I'll sleep where I choose. You'll learn to choose what I've already decided. You could make this simpler and carry me across the threshold if you're going to perform. I prefer lessons to theater." Fen prowled along the new thread, pressure without touch. Rhea stood with her tail high, furious at the way some low part of us warmed to the winter steel scent on the air. I hated that too, and hated more that I could name it. He tipped his head toward a wooden screen. "Water, salt, soap, change. I won't have my enemy's scent tracked through my house. You want me in your colors so every nose knows I'm a trophy. I want what I want. If the colors accomplish several wants at once, that's called efficiency. Control sounds nicer when you call it that. Control is efficiency practiced long enough to be beautiful." Rhea laughed in my chest, all teeth. "He will never pretend softness. That is the only mercy he offers." Behind the screen, I peeled damp leather from skin, flinched at the drag over the bite, and dragged linen down over heat. The shirt was soft with use and carried that spare, cold scent that had cut through mud and blood on the field. I washed until the water went pink and cleared and the tremor in my hands steadied. When I stepped out, he hadn't moved. He didn't look at the shirt. He watched the set of my mouth, the steadiness of my knees, the pulse at the edge of his claim. You can stand without rattling. I stood before your teeth touched me. You stood, you didn't carry your weight like it belonged to you. You will. Spare me instruction. I won't, you are under my roof, you will hear what I decide you need. The door edged inward and Cale slipped through on an angle engineered to look casual and land as disrespect. His glance took in the basin, the shirt, my bare feet on the rug, and returned to Darius with the long-suffering delight of a man already rewriting this scene for later retelling. Your guest friend is settled, pallet, blanket, water, 3 guards who like boredom more than sleep. I traded out the dreamers. I'll see her. You'll ask, Darius said, still watching me. I'm going to retire that word. It will outlast you. Cale hooked a thumb toward the corridor. You could have put her in a cell. Chains have a vintage charm. Instead, the Alpha's room. I am not anti-luxury, but I confess curiosity. Curiosity is healthy in wolves who know when to stop using it, Darius said. Post at the door, no visitors. If a guard blinks too slow, break something small and memorable. Metacarpals sing louder than pride and don't slow a sword arm, Kyle mused, almost happy. Delicate work. I'll keep it tasteful. Keep it quiet. As quiet as bone. He left with a whisper of leather. The corridor hushed again. Darius's attention settled like weight across my shoulders. Not crushing, but exact. You want to see Leora? I will see Leora. You will if you move through the rest of this night without demanding theater. I prefer my work clean. You bring your work into your bed and wonder why the sheets stain. You are not blood, he said, the certainty unadorned and more bruising than threat. You are the thing the blood is for. Rhea's fur rose. He talks like that because no one ever made him pay for the words. We held each other's eyes until the hearth sighed and settled its own weight. He didn't step closer. He didn't soften. He didn't threaten. He didn't need to. The bond was a leash he barely touched, and I still knew exactly where it would burn if he pulled. Eat, he said at last. Then you can measure my walls with your eyes and imagine where you'll hide. I prefer enemies who learn. You could lock me here. I could. Locks dull wolves. Dull wolves don't interest me. He walked back into the hall. I followed because the link tugged and because if I stayed, I would punch the wall and only teach it how I loved the sound of my own fists. The long table carried bowls that steamed, bread torn into rough halves, jugs beating with the sweat of cool water pulled too close to heat. Warriors edged back without looking like they'd moved. Ira stood with 2 trainees and drew a map in the air with her fingers, showing them where poultices went and which hands needed binding next. She didn't look at me, which told me more than if she had. Darius sat and the 3 nearest benches emptied like water leaving a basin. He poured a cup and set it within reach without reaching for me. I let it sit. He set bread by the stew and left me to refuse it or not. Rhea snarled when stubbornness tried to dress up as strength. I ate because staying upright through another night mattered more than pretending pride could feed me. The stew was heavy with root vegetables and meat that didn't care to be named. Salt woke my mouth. Heat settled the shake in my hands. Cale returned, hooked a bench into the aisle where passing him would become a decision, and watched me over the rim of a cup with pleasant malice. There's going to be disappointment, he said, almost companionable. A handful around here imagined a mate would sand down the edges, like rain on sharp rock. Their faith persists against evidence. Unwise but charming. What do they get instead? A reminder that steel stays steel, he said, tearing bread. They will practice the lesson on you first. Pacts run on demonstrations. If a man needs me to break to keep his beliefs alive, he should build better gods. Cale barked a laugh that startled a few warriors into glancing my way. He liked the answer. He also liked that it pricked where it should. Enough, Darius said, and the hall let the humor drop like a coin that rolled under a heavy thing and was not retrieved. He turned his head a fraction. You are fed. Sleep. I want eyes at dawn that see more than this. Era, north and west, infirmaries. Rotations at first bell. Kyle. Replace the inner gate with men who remember how to keep their feet when the night smiles at them. Orders climbed the room like sparks. Benches scraped, boots moved, the hall thinned to a quieter shape. Era brushed past and the edge of her shoulder touched mine, cool and precise. Her scent was all work and resolve and the kind of private ache that never shows up on a ledger. 2 minutes, Darius told me, and rose. We took the side corridor along the outer wall. The sconces burned steady, their smoke training itself up. Kyle had already placed himself at the corner with the long patience of a man who makes waiting look like a choice. Right door, he said. I can count to 2 out loud if you get sentimental. The small room held a pallet under a narrow window, a jug, and a cup. Leora stood as if a string had yanked her upright. We did not collide. We weren't given that. There was only the simple relief of seeing each other vertical. Tell me you're steady, she whispered, eyes flicking to the bandage and back to my face as if sight itself could hurt. I'm on 2 feet, you. I have water and a blanket and 3 guards who know boredom is a skill. Your beta did that, then told me he'd studied anatomy for fun. I'm deciding whether that makes him efficient or unhinged. Both can be true. She caught my forearms like a rope finds a mooring post. Listen to me. Don't give him another performance tonight. Save your teeth for when you can afford the bite. You think all I have is theater. I think you're tired and too proud to say it, and I love you for both. Be smart until you have strength to spend. Rhea pressed into that steadiness and soaked it up like heat. Keep her safe. She remembers us when we forget. The hinge clicked in the corridor. We didn't cling. We memorized the lines of each other's faces and stepped apart like soldiers who ration comfort. Darius waited outside with patience that made my jaw ache. Back on the landing, he studied my mouth, my hands, the angle of my shoulders, the pulse thudding under his mark. Don't waste time lying with your eyes. I'm telling the truth you don't deserve. You're telling the version you can stand to hear. You'll run out of those. Keep betting on that. I don't bet, he said and turned toward his door. The room closed around us with the hum of stone remembering the shape of authority. He stood in the center like a post sunk exactly where a fence has to hold. I took my place near the weapons rack, spine grateful for iron within reach. You will sleep, he said. If you wake panicked, breathe until you hear me, then match it. I won't reach for you. You'll hate yourself less if you reach for the thing that already holds you. Rhea's ears flicked, betrayed by the ugly accuracy in the instruction. Don't listen, she warned, but didn't move far from the idea of breath-finding breath. You think I'll thank you at dawn for teaching me how to inhale? I think you will wake enough for tonight. He didn't touch me. He didn't soften. He crossed to the window slit and looked out over the black seam of the wall and the scissor tracks of patrols walking their loops. The bond hummed, steady and low. A second pulse threaded under mine. I fought the urge to press my palm to the mark and order it quiet. Understand this, he said without turning. You are mine, and I am not built to regret what I take. I don't need your acceptance. I need you to live inside the fact. You won't scrape love out of this. I didn't come for love, he said, and the clean honesty cut deeper than promise. I came for what answers me. Outside, a bell gave one measured note and was answered along the wall. The house breathed. So did I, not because he told me to, but because sleep hunts faster when pride starves it. I sat on the edge of the bed without asking. It wasn't surrender. It was a choice about where to keep my strength. He turned enough to hold my gaze. The link tightened, hot and undeniable. Not a chain, not a thread. Something uglier in between that pulled exactly as hard as I refused. Rhea lifted her head and listened for Fen, every line of her body a contradiction. We will not crawl, she told him, in the quiet place inside the chest. We will not kneel. Fen answered with the slow confidence of a creature that has placed a paw on a throat before and felt the last of the fight shiver out. Mine. I lay back on linen that carried winter, stared at the dark crossbeam, and kept my breathing separate for as long as I could. In the end, my lungs matched his despite me, and before sleep dragged my eyes shut. I nailed one promise into the ache of the bite until it held. I will not break. Wind sheared across the saddle and turned the birches below into a silver sea. I kept Leora on my left so she could watch Kale and not lose sight of Era's satchel at the creek. The ring of his wolves widened without a word, the way water makes room for a boulder. Darius climbed toward me like a storm coming up a ridge, calm because it didn't need to hurry. "You're going to turn around and leave with what's left of your pride," I called, forcing my voice to hold steady. "Or you're going to crawl." "You will come down," he answered, "or I will correct the error." "Come correct me." "Gladly." Rhea bared her teeth inside my chest. "Break left. Take his angle. Make him spend patience." "On 3, I told her and let my heel edge to the rock's lip, measuring the drop, the scatter of gravel, the slant of his shoulders. "Now." I broke left and threw a knife hard enough to make the air hiss. He didn't duck. His hand closed and the blade belonged to him like it had been waiting for that palm. He drove it point down into the soil without looking and came on. "Gravity works for him," Leora said, breath tight. "I hate that." Then we changed the math. She cut right to hold Kale's attention. He shifted to block her without touching, a wall that smiled. Era moved 3 paces up from the creek, not quite close enough to interfere, close enough to witness. "You can still surrender," Darius said. "I prefer restraint to ruin. Restraint looks good on you from very far away. It looks the same at a hand's breadth. Come collect your proof." Rhea surged. I let her lengthen my fingers to claws, let heat climb my spine, not a full shift, only the part that sharpens balance and buys time. I slid low for his knee and showed my right shoulder as bait. He read it, trapped my wrist, turned it a fraction. Pain flashed. I rotated with it and drove my left elbow for his jaw. His other hand caught the joint and set it back where he wanted it. "Yield," he murmured, "not for the ring, for me." "Choke." He shoved. I slid on grit, found my feet, cut for the tendon above his heel. Leather opened. Flesh didn't. He adjusted weight as easily as a man stepping around a spilled bucket. I carved for his ribs and met bone through a forearm that didn't even flinch. "Enough," Kale called, impatient and pleased. "Take her, Alpha. I want my stew before it congeals." "She fights," Darius answered, eyes on mine. "Let her finish lying to herself about winning." "Promises aren't lies," I said. "They're teeth." "Then bite." I did. I went vicious and ugly, for joints and throats and soft places under hard. He dismantled every angle like a craftsman breaking down a door he'd built, not insulted by the attempt, simply sure of how the wood would split. He never looked at my hands. He watched me, and the insult burned hotter than the ache in my wrist. "Don't give him your rhythm," Rhea warned. "Spend his patience, assuming he has any." He does, that's why I hate him. I feinted high, dropped low, rolled and came up behind his shoulder. My nails scraped his brow, not his eye. His mouth brushed my palm for a heartbeat, and heat shot through me so sharp I recoiled like a child touching a stove. He used the recoil to pin my wrists to stone. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Yield and I take you standing. You don't take what I don't give. Then learn how I take." His grip shifted to my jaw, impersonal, exact. He turned my face as if finding the grain. I drove a knee for his groin. His thigh blocked and never lost pressure. I tried to smash my forehead to his nose. He lifted a shoulder and the strike skidded off bone. His mouth lowered to the juncture of my neck and shoulder. "Don't," I breathed to Rhea. "He doesn't get you." "He already has the part I hate," she choked. "The part that answers." Heat flooded my skin a half-second before pain detonated. His teeth sank and the world cracked. Light hit my nerves like lightning finding iron. My sound wasn't a scream, wasn't a snarl. It was the throat's oldest language being forced to learn a new word in an instant. Fire spread. Then something deeper moved under it, not touch, but possession. A command poured into bone with the inevitability of tide. It spoke without syllables, and I understood it anyway. Mine. I threw everything I was at the word. No, no, no. You are, came back, layered with Fenn's rougher certainty, a wolf's claim spoken in meaning instead of vowels. He pushed through the seam, the bite opened, old and heavy. Rhea hit him head-on, teeth to teeth. She tore. And still, the only thing that moved was me. Dragged between them like a current the moon refused to release. Get out of me, I hurled down the new path. Get out. Breathe, Darius ordered along it, and air filled my lungs before I could close them to disobey. His presence in the link wasn't loud. It was close, too close to dodge. Breath found breath and moved. Rhea held, shaking, fury and shame and need snarled together. He is the end of hunger, she keened. I hate him. I want to sink my teeth and never lift my head. Fight now, I told her. Hate later, want never. She bristled and braced. It hurt and it helped. The pain shrank to a hot ring where his teeth had been. He lifted his head. My blood glistened on his mouth like a mark he wore because it suited him. The sight yanked another sound out of Rhea that bent my knees. I locked them. Look at me, he said, and the command slid along both throat and bond. I did. His eyes were a wrong gold poured over human focus. A storm contained because it chose to be. The bond hummed like a wire pulled too tight. I could feel the shape of his attention around me as precisely as a hand around a wrist. Get out, I said again, breath rough. Stay out. No, he answered inside while his mouth went still. Acclimate. I will tear you out. You will bruise yourself on me, he said, maddeningly practical, and prefer the ache to the absence. Stop deciding what I prefer. I decide facts. Preferences adapt. Kyle's laugh drifted up, low and delighted. Clean work, he said to no one in particular. We'll dine on this story all winter. Era stepped to the edge of the ring, eyes on the wound instead of my face. If you want her upright, you finish admiring your artistry later. Bind the damage. Bind it, Darius said without looking away from me. He released my wrists and my jaw. He didn't step back, he didn't need to. The bond closed the distance more efficiently than hands. Era's fingers were cool and fast, salve burned, and then went cold enough to make my vision swim. Linen cinched with knots small and cruelly neat. Hold still, Era said, voice dry. Or don't. It'll hold anyway. You always praise him by patching what he breaks. I praise competence by refusing to let it waste mine, she said. Eat salt soon, or enjoy falling down. Jealousy looks strange on you, I told her. It looks better in private, she said, and cut the bandaged tail too sharply to be an accident. Leora pushed to the ring's edge. Kale shifted one pace to bar her line of sight, not touching her, forcing her to choose collision or patience. She lifted her chin and chose patience because she was smart and because she had never been able to outstare a wall. Move, she told him quietly. After, he said, not even glancing down. I'm working. On what? On learning where my alpha's line lives tonight. Darius, I said, hating the way the bond warmed around his name. If you want me to hear you, stop using my friend as a fence. Leora stays where she is, he said. You come when I call. I have no intention of training two stubborn creatures at once. You think I'll come when you whistle? You will test it, he said. We will find the line. Then you will stop searching for a better one because there isn't one. Rhea snarled. He names the cage as if it were a gift. He names nothing I accept, I told her, even as the bond tugged again, a tide at my ankles asking if I preferred to fall now or later. Walk, he said, mind to mind, then aloud for anyone who needed the lesson. I didn't move. Every muscle locked. The tug sharpened. It wasn't irresistible. It was persuasive in the way a cliff is persuasive when you run out of ground. I took a step because choosing it cost less strength than letting him take it. He saw the decision, and the corner of his mouth moved the way a craftsman's does when the blade finally catches exactly right in the wood. "Use your defiance where it matters," he said. "This is theater. I don't enjoy plays." "You enjoy audiences," I said. "You've built your life around them." "I enjoy order," he said, "and outcomes." Behind the trees, the battle's sound changed from scatter to a single wave that broke and receded. The creek got loud again, busy with its eternal work of carrying away pieces of nights like this. The ring tightened a fraction, then loosened when Darius didn't change his stance. "You didn't ask me what I want," I said. "I don't ask children playing with knives whether they prefer leather or silk for the sheath," he said. "I decide. They learn why it was better. You think I'll thank you. You will stop lying about what you burn for. Give me a reason to burn for you." "I already did," he said, and the bond pulsed once in agreement, Rhea answering with a snarl that wasn't pure hate and made me livid with myself. Era finished the last knot and pressed her palm flat to test the hold. "She needs water and salt." "She'll have them," he said. Kale's voice turned lighter, almost friendly in how it wasn't. "You know there are wolves here who thought a mate would make him gentle." "They can learn the truth," I said. "If their faith requires my breaking, they should build better gods." Kyle's laugh rolled like a coin across stone. "Keep that tongue. It makes dull men interesting." Leora found my eyes around the edge of Kale's shoulder and made one word an oath. "Selene." "I'm here," I told her, and made 2 words a promise. Darius lifted his chin half an inch and the ring flexed to make a corridor. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't drag me. He turned, certain I would follow, and the bond tugged with the patience of weather. I took one step because my body betrayed me and because saving strength matters more than winning moments. He watched, satisfied not by submission, but by the economy of it. "You will learn to breathe when I tell you," he said, quiet enough that only the link heard the shape of it. "It keeps you from wasting yourself." "I'll learn nothing I don't steal first. I prefer thieves to beggars." Rhea lifted her head inside me, bloody, shaking, alive. "He will keep pressing." "Then we keep standing," I said, "and until we win. Or until we choose what hurts less," she whispered, honest in a way that made me hate the angles of the world. He moved. I moved. The ring opened. The birches hissed as the wind turned them. The creek ran and ran. Every step taught me a new detail about the weight of the bond, how it pulled without tearing, how it knew the shape of my balance and adjusted, how his attention could sit on my skin like heat. Era fell in at the edge of our wake because healers go where mess travels. Kale ghosted the right flank, amused and vigilant. Leora kept pace with the arc of the circle, lips white where she bit them to stay quiet. The pack watched like men watching a knife being carried across a room, some hoping to see it drop, some hoping to see it used. "One more order," Darius said over his shoulder, only for me. "When I speak to you in here, you answer first in here. If you pretend you can block me out, you will only teach me where you are soft." "You won't find soft. I will find human," he said. "It is enough. You are not interested in my humanity. I am interested in your accuracy," he said. "Learn it." We reached the slope and the ring shifted to cover the descent. He did not touch me. He didn't need to. The mark throbbed. The linkage hummed. My breath matched his despite everything in me that fought it. I hated the echo, and I listened to it anyway because bodies are treacherous and honest at once. "Rhea," I said inside because I needed her sound more than mine. "Stay with me." "Always," she answered, and if the word wore a tremor, I pretended not to notice. The last thing I saw before the birches hid the ridge was Leora's face, set like flint. The last thing I felt was the weight of Darius's certainty in the link, heavy as a hand at the back of my neck guiding me toward a door I swore I wouldn't enter and would kick down later anyway. The night tilted, made room, and waited for the next bruise. Night pressed over the fort like a heavy hand, the braziers painting the yard in steady orange, and the iron stink of blood clinging to the stone. Darius walked the inner line of guards without hurry, the kind of inspection that changed men before he reached them. When he pivoted at the far post, the bond tugged in my bones, as if a hidden rope had been drawn through me and tied to the center of him. I didn't look away. Looking away made the pull worse. Leora stood on a low step near the gate with two spearmen pretending not to guard her. She didn't try to be brave for me. She simply was, chin tilted, hands lax at her side so no one would read fear and get ideas. Kale lounged against a post with the patience of a predator sunning itself. Ira moved the yard like a quiet storm, setting down bowls, wrapping ribs, telling big men with bigger wounds to hold still if they wanted to see morning. She did not come to me, she did not avoid me, she did the work. Near the training circle, voices tightened into a knot that meant pride was limbering up. Darius turned that way without breaking stride. Kale's eyes lit the way a man's do when foolishness starts building a bonfire. Before I caught individual words, I tasted the intent. This was going to be about me, which meant it was about him, which meant someone was going to learn, and it would not be gentle. A broad-shouldered warrior stepped into the ring light with a face that would have been handsome if it hadn't been holding grief by the throat. His forearm wore a new scar like a lesson not yet digested. Older fighters made room because they wanted to hear, and because distance can't save you from an alpha's attention, but it might save you from splatter. Name, Darius said, not loud. The circle came closer to listen. Torn, the man answered. My brother died on the south run while we made a space for an enemy. You brought her into our ring and told us to be still. I want to know why I should guard the throat you carried from the other side. Kale slid his gaze to me, then back to Torrin, then to Darius, enjoying every angle. Leora's fingers pressed the step. Era shifted a tray to her other hand and went still in the way of wild things that hear the trap teeth click. You want to know? Darius said, even as a level floor. You ask with your mouth closed, then you listen. Torrin's jaw worked and settled. I'm asking. You think her presence cost you safety? Darius said. It costs you convenience. Safety is a thing we rent by the night with attention and blood. You don't get to own it. You sharpen it. Torrin's gaze caught the bandage at my neck, then returned to Darius like a thrown blade. She is an enemy. She is my mate. The word landed with no ceremony, a spike hit once and driven all the way. The ring breathed. Torrin flinched as if the truth had been colder than he'd prepared to swallow. Even if your claim stands, he pushed on, stubborn enough to doom himself. My brother still died while you brought your mate across our gate. We bow because you decided your teeth preferred an enemy's throat to ours. Someone behind him muttered caution. Kale's mouth curved into a sharper thing. Era blinked once, slow, like a prayer she refused to say out loud. Your brother died because he stood where I told him to and held the ground I pointed at, Darius said. I will carve his name into my wall, and when I bleed, I'll think of him. I won't apologize for winning and taking home what I chose to take. So the law changes because you want, Torrin said, chin angling upward into the last of his courage. Your desire becomes our rule. Darius didn't sigh. He didn't frown. He didn't perform anything except decision. He crossed the space in 3 steps, caught Torrin's wrist the way a craftsman catches a slipping tool, twisted, and folded the man to his knees with a sound like canvas tearing. Listen, Darius said, quiet as before. You're not dying. You're learning. You will learn faster on your feet. Remember the difference. Torrin swung at Darius's ribs with his free hand because pain makes bad ideas look holy. The punch landed without moving anything important. Darius set his boot on the bent wrist, pressure exact. Bones considered the lesson and accepted it. Torrin's breath broke. He didn't beg. That was your right hand, Darius said. You'll learn to eat with your left and fight with it too. Speak of my mate like she is a crack in the wall, and you bleed from your mouth next time. Torrin looked up at me instead of him, hate clean enough to make me wish it had been mud. He will break you. You'll thank him while you bleed. Rhea pressed hard against my ribs, startling me with the pity that flashed through her anger. We break for ourselves, she thought, fierce and private. I held the thought because it was ours. Get him to the healer, Cale said lightly, pushing off his post with a pleased stretch. He learned on the right bones. He'll retain the lesson. Era had already moved, tray traded for hands, fingers mapping damage, mouth flat to hide the words her heart wanted to waste. Torrin stood under his own weight by force of pride, and walked by it too. The ring loosened as if a cloud had climbed off the sun. Darius looked at the rest and set the law with a few lines that nailed themselves to bone. There will be no testing of my line through her, no hands without my order, no mouths making stories in corners. You will learn to hold two truths at once, enemy and mate, or you will be taught more slowly with worse tools. We are done here. Men suddenly remembered boots, straps, water, the comfort of tasks. The yard released a breath. Darius turned, and his attention found me with the ease of a river finding its bed. The link lifted like a hawk on warm air. He didn't pull. I followed because every piece of fight spent here would be missing later, and because the bond punishes stubbornness by making your muscles into wires. Leora watched me pass with questions, hope, and a single order packed into a look. Breathe. Rhea put a paw against my ribs and obeyed even while she bristled. Cale ghosted at our shoulder, a shadow smiling. Era moved the other way with Torrin and his ruined wrist, eyes flicking across me for half a heartbeat with a sharp thought I read without needing the link. This is how he keeps them, not with sweet, with certain. We climbed the narrow stair to his door. The corridor held the stored heat of the day and the held breath of stone. He opened and went in, and the room shaped itself around him like it always did. I crossed the threshold because I refused the theater of being dragged. The door shut. Quiet stepped closer. He stopped in the center and let the silence settle to a weight we both could feel. He gave me that, the space where air belonged to me for 3 breaths, maybe 4. He always knew when to give that much and no more. You stood, he said. You didn't throw yourself at Torrin and turn a boy with a broken wrist into a dead man. Good. I didn't stand for you. You stood correctly. I don't need ownership of your reason. You broke him to draw a map for me. I broke him because he used his mouth like a weapon and forgot wrists are easier to teach. If you see a map, use it. You call this law, you polish the word until it looks like mercy. It is law because it holds under pressure, he said. I will not allow children to sharpen their courage on you to test whether I meant the words I spoke. You love that word, children. He was grown. He was a boy carrying grief like a torch and mistaking the light for truth, Darius said, going to the window slit and watching the black seam of wall, the scissoring patrols, the way the fort breathed when it thought no one listened. I don't teach with torches, I teach with weight. You told me to breathe earlier, teach it then. I want to hear the trick in your voice. Breathe, he said, and the command slid along the bond and found my lungs before I could pretend to bar the door. Again. Longer. His tone didn't soothe. It calibrated. Air moved. Rhea's hackles eased by a hair. Fen turned over on the other side of the line like a big animal made comfortable by the sound of obedience. I know what you're doing, I said when the shakes receded enough for words to stand. You're making my nerves associate your voice with relief. I'm making your survival associate with accuracy. If my voice is a tool, use it. Tools are not lovers. I am not falling in love with orders. You will prefer them to chaos. That will be enough. He came closer, heat crossing the last foot of space like an argument finishing itself. The clean winter scent threaded through smoke and leather, the smell I'd learned to hate because my body kept admitting it did something useful to fear. The mark at my neck pulsed once, not pain, not pleasure, a practical acknowledgement. You let them see you eat and drink when I put food in your hand, he said. Good. They don't need a symbol that lives on faith. They need a wolf who requires water and still stands. You are very proud of firmness. Sometimes it just sounds like laziness in armor. Laziness avoids decision. I make them. You don't see people, I told him. You see material. Wood to span a distance. Stone to hold a wall. You look at me, and measure where I'll bear weight. Yes, he said, simple as a nail-driven flush. You are material and you are mine, which means your capacity has value I will not waste. Managed. Directed, he corrected, mild as a man sharpening a small blade. You carry heat, hate, clarity. Spend them on work, not theater. Then you shine. My gaze betrayed me to his throat for half a breath, that precise notch above the collarbone, the steady slide of breath. I looked away, furious at myself. He saw the glance. He filed it. He files everything. Do you want gratitude for breaking a wrist in front of me? I asked. A thank you for proving you're sharp on someone softer than you. I want you to separate gravity from me, he said. I will not apologize for either. You think I will learn to like this? You will learn the truth quickly and prefer it to a slow, pretty lie, he said. You will also learn that starving a bond only makes it feral. Eat, sleep, breathe. Hate me awake. Fight me with your eyes open. That is the only way you win anything here. I do not win by wanting what you want. You don't have to want it, you have to do it. I will find a way to throw your rules back in your face. Good, he said, and stepped close enough that heat blurred the edges of vision. I prefer you sharp. I prefer you angry. I prefer you brave. Soft wolves die here. I didn't choose one. The room seemed smaller with him standing there, one palm braced on the stone beside my head, not touching me with skin, touching me with presence. The weapons on the rack hummed the way metal does when it remembers. The bed in the corner felt like a dare. I tried to borrow strength from the wall. Stone lends nothing. It simply accepts your back. You haven't asked for forgiveness once. I am not built for that word, he said. I am built for possession and protection and the kind of devotion that looks like violence to people who don't understand it. That is not love. It isn't meant to be, he returned, clean and unadorned. I didn't bring you to sweeten you. I brought you because I answered a fact with a decision, and I finish what I decide. Then decide that I can see Leora in the morning without a guard breathing down her neck. You can see her with a guard at your side, he said. The difference matters. It always does to men like you. It matters to wolves who prefer living to statistics. We watched each other while the house made its small night sounds. Somewhere a bell tapped once, and another answered. Era's voice rose on a stair and dropped again. The bond sat heavy and hot, not choking, constant. He studied me with the unsentimental care of a man deciding where to put his weight on a cracking beam and trusting his reed. You think I don't see you? He said after a long minute. I see the way your hands refuse to tremble in front of eyes. I see how much you hate help, and how rarely you need it. I see your wolf wanting my throat and wanting to sleep in the heat of it afterward. I do not mistake any of this for surrender. Then stop speaking like I've already bent. You already bend to hunger, to cold, to grief. You will bend here. I will make the bend hold rather than break. I wanted to lunge and bite until words didn't matter. I wanted to shove him away and pull him closer, and I did not trust the part of me choosing which. I wanted to run with Leora into the dark and not stop. I wanted sleep so deep the world would have to dig me out. Rhea paced the edges of me, furious and exhausted and still fierce. I pressed back. Do not confuse endurance with consent, I said. Do not confuse breath with devotion. I am not confused, he said. I am patient. Teach me how to break you. Start, he said, and the corner of his mouth tilted a fraction, interest sharpened like a tool being tested. Fen, Rhea warned because she understood what my body wanted even as she hated it. If you push us again, we take a piece. Fen rolled through the bond like distant thunder. Try, little flame. See how much of me fits in your teeth. Heat rose under my skin. I held my ground. Darius took one step more, then another, until my shoulder blades met stone. He didn't touch me with his hands. He used nearness like an instrument built for this room alone. Breathe, he said again, and the order went through the link soft for the first time, efficient and shaming because it worked. Again, slower. I hate you. Good. Hatred keeps you awake. His eyes tracked the line of the bandage. He leaned in until his breath warmed the skin beside it. The mark answered with a heat that wasn't pain and wasn't pleasure, something simpler, like a muscle remembering work. Rhea jerked the inner leash hard. I did not move. I also didn't lean. This belongs to me, he murmured, for the bond more than the air. Not the skin, the answer beneath it. You don't own answers. I own what answers me, you do. Feel this, I snapped, and shoved at the link as if it were a door. He didn't fight. He held and let my force bleed out into quiet. Patience felt like insult and also like safety, and I hated the shape of both truths. Sleep, he said finally. If you wake in the dark with your heart wrong, listen. Find mine. Match it. It will feel like theft. Later it will feel like law. I will not borrow anything from you. You already are. I sat on the edge of the bed because the alternative was falling and I would not give him that. He stripped gloves and set them palm up on the table, proof that hands that break bones also blister. He doused 2 braziers and left a low glow that turned beams and steel into silhouettes. The room thinned to breath and heat and the quiet of a house that believes it has outlasted the night. Tomorrow you walk the wall with me, he said. You listen to how noon breathes. You count. You don't speak unless I tell you to. You learn anyway. You give orders like prayers. Do you expect worship? I expect competence. Tell Era her devotion is optional. Era knows the cost of longing, he said. That is why I keep her work close and her heart far. Silence settled. The bond did not. It warmed like a banked coal and tightened like a belt drawn one more notch than you'd choose. I lay back because pretending I could sit guard over sleep would only make me stupid. Eyes closed, the room got larger. The mark throbbed. The line hummed. Outside, patrol feet made their quiet pattern. Inside, my heart climbed too fast. Breathe, he said one last time. Not a command, a measure offered. I counted in. I counted out. The second beat arrived, not under my fingers or at my throat, but behind my sternum, a ghost of his pulse moving with mine. Panic flashed bright and burned out. I tried to resist the sinking and found that resistance made the pull worse. I stopped resisting. My heart matched his. It felt like stealing. It felt like a rule older than both of us. Rhea lifted her head, startled, then laid it down with a small sound that wasn't surrender and wasn't defiance. Fens settled the way big animals do when they know the door is closed and the den is chosen. The fort breathed. The night held. I stared into the dark and clenched my jaw on a promise I kept hammering into the mark until it held. I will not yield. The second pulse did not argue. It kept beating, steady and certain, until the rhythm pulled me under, and sleep finally took the parts of me still willing to obey nothing but exhaustion. Noon burned white on the stone. Heat lifted off the wall and braided with the wind, the kind that smells like dry grass and old smoke. Darius climbed without looking back, and the bond tugged through my bones as if a hidden hook lived under my skin. I followed because the alternative was giving him the pleasure of watching me do it. From up here, the fort made a clean pattern, patrols crossing like scissors, messengers cutting the inner track, braziers banked in their iron cups, bells hung under weathered eaves like quiet teeth. Count torches, not heads. Torches tell you where attention fails. His voice moved along the link, too close for distance to help. Listen to wind. It carries sound off the low ditch and swallows it at the north turn. If you run there, you vanish or you die. Choose early. You promised silence inside this walk. I promised you would keep it. Rhea pressed hard along my ribs. He puts his paw on everything. Bite it. Make him pull back with fewer fingers. We paused at a bend where the horizon opened like a blade. The drop was clean and merciless. I set a heel on the inner lip out of spite and called the ground mine. The mark throbbed once in agreement with a rhythm that wasn't mine. heat slipping under skin as if someone had palmed a coin into me and dared me to pretend I didn't feel it. I ignored the pull and studied what he clearly wanted me to see. Fresh fill darkening the outer ditch, the polished run between gatehouse and inner tower, a horn post kept by a woman old enough to have outlived 3 alphas. She was here before me, he said. She will be here after you stop rehearsing escape in your head. I'm not rehearsing. You are always rehearsing. Today you do it in place because you ran out of ground. Kyle came up from the next stair with loose-limbed ease and an expression built to irritate. He leaned into the wind like he'd ordered it himself. Ring the bells, our guest made it up 2 flights without falling, he drawled. At this rate, we may let her walk corners unsupervised by winter. Save your humor for moments I request it, Darius answered, still moving. It will last longer. Kale fell in step, eyes bright, scar at his mouth tilting his grin. I enjoy spending it now. Interest rates change when an alpha carries an enemy to bed. Find the mouth that said that aloud, Darius said, calm as the stone. Bring me its teeth. Kyle's grin cooled, then wandered my way, hunting. You look better standing. Sitting beside him made you look small, upright. You're interesting. I was interesting before you learned how to lace your boots. Good, the hall was dull, we needed smoke. Walk, Darius said, and for once Kale obeyed. We crossed the south line. Below us, men straightened stakes and combed the beaten grass back into rows. A boy looked up and forgot to breathe when his eyes landed on the bandage at my throat. His friend punched his shoulder and dragged his attention down to the work. Era's dark braid drew a straight line between 2 cots where she was teaching a novice to wrap a rib without wasting linen. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. People like her feel storms through stone. Your healer hates that I still breathe. She hates inefficiency, Darius said. Death solves too quickly. She prefers difficult puzzles. You are a man who thinks he's a puzzle worth her time. I am a man solved by no one. Rhea worked her jaw against the bond's pressure. He wants his voice in our head while we look at his walls so the house wears his breath. Don't let sound become stone. The West Tower eats archers' angles after sundown, he added. Keep eyes low and look where shadow forgets to settle. How generous to share your weaknesses with your captive. You will learn them from me or from a worse teacher. Kale brushed rock dust off his palm. She learns fast when lessons bite. I recommend practice. Your recommendations arrive dressed as curiosity and leave as boredom. Find a different cloak. Kale's grin shifted. Fine. Accuracy, then. They watched last night. They watched you talk a boy to his knees and keep him there like a lecture. They watched her watch you do it. Those 2 pictures stirred them more than the stew. They will learn to live stirred, Darius said, or they will sour. You make poetry out of meat. Fetch the North Horn schedule, Darius told him, eyes on the parapet ahead. Compare it to the night notes. If you find a seam, sew it. I love it when you talk domestic, Kale murmured and vanished down the steps with a predator's patience for fences that keep useful things inside. Darius turned me with a grip at my elbow that wasn't rough, wasn't kind, only correct. He set my spine against warm stone and angled my gaze toward the drop. Distance yawned. Heat came off him like a disciplined fire. The link cinched tight enough to sting. How many paces to the ditch? 112. Too many. You counted the slope twice. Again. 103. Better. Which tower can you reach unseen if you use the cap crack at the second Merlin and stay behind the brazier stand? None. You built it to punish liars. Yes, what does that teach you? Lie better or not at all. Lie well and not to yourself, he said, and a sliver of warmth slid under the steel, and then quenched harder. Rhea shoved hard. Make distance, he will always come closer. Closer is where the teeth live. You brought me up here to make me dizzy, I said out loud because the wind would carry the sound away from men and walls. Or to push me. Which is it? Neither. Up here the wind takes fear away before it turns to rot. I prefer the stones clean. He tipped my chin by a fraction the way a craftsman turns a blade for light. Look. Fields rolled toward the horizon. The abandoned watchfire's scar glassed black on a far ridge where lightning had hit 2 summers back. A new track wormed across the low ground where patrols, repeated, had made habit into road. 2 crows mobbed a hawk until the hawk climbed and left. Who strung thorns at the north wall? Those hooks don't belong to my men. Hillborn, I answered before my better sense stepped in. They like symbols better than outcomes. Then someone inside invited them. The hooks were fresh. You already knew, I said. You're measuring how my head answers. I'm checking whether it is still yours. I didn't give you that. You gave me everything when your wolf heard mine, he returned, not boasting, simply naming the weather. You will take pieces back by learning, not by pretending to be whole. Below, Leora crossed the yard with a basket of folded bandages and a soldier's roll to her step. She looked up because instincts learn the weight of air. Our eyes met for a heartbeat. She didn't lift a hand. I didn't nod. The line drawn by that look still nailed itself to my ribs. She'll be useful if she keeps that spine, he observed, watching my face, not Leora. I need people who don't tremble when wood creaks. Stop breaking wrists. I break what wastes time, I grow what doesn't. You sound like a farmer. I sound like a man who intends the roof to hold through winter. Why stand this close to the edge? Because you do, he said, and because you lie better with a drop behind you. Wind freshened until the flags cracked. I closed my eyes for one steadying breath, not to shut him out, only to force my lungs to ignore his count. The link hummed anyway. Fen settled in the seam like a winter animal in a den it had chosen. Rhea bared her teeth and kept them bared, unwilling to pay even the small heat of her mouth. We moved along the outer course. He marked notches with a chin tilt, chips with a quiet pause, told me in a handful of words what each flaw would ask of a defender on a bad night. He didn't touch me. He no longer needed to. The bond did the small work of keeping me close, and his presence did the rest. 2 sentries leaned wrong at the north turn. They weren't lazy, just tired enough for competence to slip. Darius stopped 3 paces off and let the silence do the speaking. The nearer one straightened. The farther blinked and pushed off the stone like a swimmer coming up from a deep pool. Report. Lowfield's quiet hawk riding the ditch, thin smoke at the far ridge. How thin? 1 fire, maybe 2. Smell. The man inhaled carefully. Pine and tallow. Not our pitch. Darius glanced once my way, the smallest handoff. I gave the answer because withholding it would waste me later. Hillborn, scouts watching your patterns. If they were staging, you'd smell fat meat and green wood. They're mapping horns. Change your stance every 20 breaths, Darius told them. Count. If counting falters, switch posts and wake relief with a lie convincing enough to keep him angry until dawn. Don't let this wall teach you boredom. We moved on. Kyle reappeared with a slate and chalk lines, eyes amused at his own industry. He matched pace and held the slate where Darius would look, not where I could. Schedule slips places the horn goes quiet because Olin thinks 3 is holy and always checks left first, he reported. Right tower naps to the beat of his footsteps. Change it, Darius said. Olin to the right. The tower, Darius corrected. Make the right creak first. Let habit serve us. Don't fix men you can use. Fix wood. Kale's grin flared. I could almost love you when you talk like that. Love your work. He drifted nearer my shoulder by a fraction, testing whether I'd give space. I didn't. He looked pleased anyway. Which stones lie best to you, Selene? Some walls prefer certain feet. The south inner, I said before pride bit my tongue. Cap joints crooked enough to pass for true. A knee fits there if you want hands free. Maker's breath, she's fun. You are done, Darius told him, a blade-smooth line of sound. Kale tipped the slate in a jaunty apology and ghosted away, humming a tune that died the second it reached Darius's back. We reached the high run where the ridge steepens and the stones pool heat. The walkway narrowed until two wolves had to choose who would pass first. He didn't ask. He stepped into my space and made the decision obvious. I shifted sideways rather than fall into him and lose a different fight. "Stop." He set one palm on the merlin at my shoulder and the other on the cap behind me. He didn't touch me. He pinned me with architecture, with heat, with attention, and the bond did what hands didn't. The drop waited, the sky felt too near. "Tell me what your wolf does when I stand here." "Snarl." Rhea delivered it, sound grinding bone from the inside. "Only snarl. She snarls and counts your pulse so she can tear it free. Accuracy looks good on you, what else?" I kept my eyes on the far hills until they blurred. The truth sat hot on my tongue, hateful and undeniable. She wants to take your throat and then lie down in the heat of it. She wants winter and fire at once. She wants to bite until this stops existing. "This exists because law exists," he said, voice low enough that the wind leaned to carry it. "We answer it." I didn't vote. Neither did I. Convenient. Honest. Down in the yard, a bucket clattered and someone cursed, then laughed. The old hornkeeper on the far perch weighed her horn in her hand, laid it down, and went on reading the fields. The world kept moving, horribly normal while my body mapped every inch of the heat between us as if forced to draw by memory. "Look at me." He always wanted my attention where he put it. I looked. Gold poured over human steadiness, a storm bottled because it chose to be. Heat crossed the inch between us, the breath off his mouth catching on the edge of Ira's neat knots. Fen rolled closer at the same time Rhea braced. The pressure didn't increase. It stayed exactly where it could not be ignored. "Your body tells truth when your mouth spends itself on posture," he said. "Stop mistaking noise for defiance." "I owe you nothing." "You owe accuracy to yourself," he said. "If you cannot give it out loud, give it here." His knuckles tapped his chest once and the bond thrummed under my sternum. A chord struck without sound. I hated the flash of relief in my spine. Under it, something uglier refused to let go. "You will not make me confess to you like a penitent begging a priest." "I don't need confession, I need data. I measure what I intend to keep. Reduce me to measurements and call it care." "I count because I intend the roof to hold," he said, patient as winter. "Care lives in the counting. I will not be grateful because you find me useful. Be grateful for breath." The order uncoiled through the link and landed before I could block it. "Take it. Hold. Let it down. Again. You are on my wall under my hand and I still require you to stand. Obey your own body." "I won't name your help. Don't use it." We held like that, neither moving, while the heat in the stone leached at my calves and the wind salted my lips and the bond hummed inside bone like wire I could not cut. Below, Leora disappeared into the cool shade of the infirmary. Ira's voice snapped an instruction. Kale's whistle started and died, memory finally beating mischief. "Mine," Fen murmured in the seam, voice like snow over pine. "Come down and be still." Rhea's answer was older than words. "Not yours. We belong where we choose." "Choose," Fen said, and the weight of him settled as if choice itself were a pressure. "Step back," I told Darius aloud, because I wanted the wind to carry at least one thing he couldn't keep. "Teach me your towers from a distance you didn't invent." "No. If you want distance, move without falling. If you stay, learn how to stand while wanting to leave. Those are the only lessons that keep wolves alive." "I don't break." "You will bend," he said. "Learn the difference, it saves you. Your wolves mine." Heat and height and breath drew tight around us. A circle only one of us had chosen, and both were inside. The line between our pulses narrowed until mine, traitor, matched his for 2 beats and then stuttered free. I felt it. He felt it. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply watched the truth show itself and refused to look away. The wall waited. The sky watched. My body betrayed me without asking permission, and the bond recorded the betrayal like a law struck into stone. I kept my spine against the Merlin and my eyes on his and refused to speak the truth my breath had already told him. The hall wore victory like a scar. Smoke braided above the rafters. Torches burned with a slow, confident flame that threw long light across the banners and the polished grooves in the table. The smell was meat and bread and the iron tint of a house that refused to stop breathing. Darius entered without ceremony, and the noise dropped until it felt like listening to a storm from far away. He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. The bond tugged with the quiet certainty of tide. I took the place he intended at his right. The Alpha's chair was carved like a warning. His shadow fell across my plate, and the first taste of the feast was the weight of being seen. Benches near us emptied with smooth practice. Leora sat 3 tables down, framed by 2 spearmen who pretended not to exist. She caught my eye and gave me the smallest nod, the kind that told me to breathe before I tried to speak. Kyle slid into view like a knife appearing under good light, and took the seat at Darius's left with a grin he didn't waste on anyone else. Era moved between benches with a tray balanced on one palm, braid tight, mouth set. She took inventory with a glance. When she reached our end of the table, she set down a jug that sweated cool and a small bowl of salt as if measuring a dose. Her gaze paused on the bandage at my throat, then drifted back to Darius like iron finds a magnet. Darius did not ask for silence. He simply looked down the length of the table until the last fallen knife was found and set straight. He poured water and handed me the first cup, not for comfort, for order. Eat, drink, you fought, you live. Don't waste what I put in your hands. The benches exhaled. Platters came and went, meat steaming, bread torn in rough halves. The man across from me had a bandage at his temple, and the careful posture of someone refusing to feel pain until the plate was clean. Kyle tore bread, dipped it into thick stew, and chewed like a man very pleased with the shape of his night. For the record, he said to no one and everyone, I argued for shackles. This is more entertaining, but my original plan had better lighting. You like cages because you think the key is already in your pocket, I answered, steady enough to pass. Keys are useful, theater is fleeting. Ira refilled Darius's cup before he reached for it, thumb sealing the rim to stop any drip. The motion was efficient, almost tender if you didn't know her. Rhea's hackles rose before my mind named the reason. Heat lifted under the bandage and pulsed with the thing I refused to count. Without looking at me, Ira set her voice low. Your pulse is too high. Use the salt. I use it when I choose. Choose not to faint at his table. Cale tipped his cup toward me. You could glare through linen if you try harder. I admire commitment. Darius let the talking exist a breath longer than comfort, then set his gaze on Cale like a plumb line. The bench under Cale's hips found the floor. His grin turned from bright to useful. An older warrior touched the horn over the hearth, then left it alone. Men told quiet versions of the same 3 stories every pack tells after a fight and changed names just enough to make them new. Food steadied my hands in spite of me. The bond did not loosen. It warmed, humming, keeping time with Darius's breath, the way trained feet keep time with drum beats. You plan to parade me and call it dinner, I said under the noise. Voice for him alone. I plan to teach without blood wasted on plays. They learn faster by watching me treat you as I decide than by listening to speeches about what's true already. You like lessons that come on plates. I like outcomes that sit still long enough to be used. Ira paused with a small covered bowl and glanced at Darius as if judging whether a blade deserved oil. She set the bowl at his plate, lifted the lid with 2 fingers. Steam breathed out, sharp with mint and a bitter bite. He didn't look at her. He drank, set it aside. She moved on with nothing to show for it except efficiency. She wants his eyes because his eyes measure, Rhea growled inside. We want nothing he weighs. Then stop flinching when he drinks what she brings. I am counting. Fen shifted in the seam like a big animal moving in sleep. Mine. The word arrived as pressure rather than sound. Rhea bared her teeth and gave him iron and winter back. Not yours. Not ever. The promise trembled and fury blistered under my skin at the tremor. A clatter broke along the table. A young hunter dropped a knife, reached for it with the panic of a man who wanted a mistake undone more than he wanted his fingers. Darius's head turned, and the hunter froze before flesh became proof. Kyle reached instead, slow and amused, and set the knife by the boy's plate. Keep your hands, save your blood. The boy nodded barely and returned to breathing. The hall's hum smoothed. Ira circled with a slender wine jug, the one used when celebration felt earned rather than forced. She set it near Darius and moved to pour. His hand covered his cup without looking at her. His chin tipped toward me. She hesitated a beat, then turned and filled mine first. Firelight cut a thin ribbon in the wine across my palm. Drink, Darius said along the link. You won't act like abstinence equals strength at my table. I lifted the cup because starving pride had embarrassed me twice already. The wine ate meat fat off my tongue. Heat followed, and then steadied. The room eased by a degree, and then clicked back to itself. Kale folded bread into a crude mouth. Toast to the Alpha's taste in impossible problems, or to his appetite for them. Toast to the roof that holds, Darius said aloud, and to the names on the wall who bought the holding. He raised his cup not high, just enough to be seen and obeyed. The hall echoed the motion. Men drank. The space the words made was cleaner than grief. When he set his cup down, the sound carried like a decision. Mine. It didn't leave his mouth. It slid through the link and pressed flat against bone with the ease of a hand finding a throat. Rhea snarled until the noise shivered up my spine. The snarl changed nothing. It only proved I could still make sound. Kale watched my face as if learning an alphabet he planned to use. Welcome to the part where survival requires the right enemies and the right meals. I prefer enemies who talk less. He laughed, pleased by pain that wasn't his. Darius let the laugh travel and die. He reached for bread. Era reached, too, hand arriving at the platter as his did, fingers near enough that contact would have looked accidental and deliberate. The move was neat and practiced. Rhea's reaction slammed into me, rough and ugly. Heat climbed my throat like a ladder. Era didn't look at me. She offered the bread to Darius, palm up. The way you offer something to a man who takes what he wants and respects that you know it. He took the piece nearest and did not touch her. The restraint was not gentle. It was absolute. Disappointment flickered and went out. She set her jaw and put the rest of her skill to work where it would count. Leora's attention touched me like a hand through cloth. You are here. Keep breathing. Count something that belongs to you. I counted her breaths across distance. I got to 6 before the link burned through the numbers. A warrior turned with a courage that had not yet met consequence. He lifted his cup and sent me a look clean as a blade on a whetstone. To the mate who softens him, may you teach him a lesson the rest of us can use. He thought the room was with him. Darius took the cup from midair, poured the wine on the floor, handed the empty vessel back. You won't beg softness through her. If you need gentle, find a milk cow and ask its patience. If you need a lesson, ask to fight. If you need a place for fear, keep it behind your teeth while your hands do work. Silence followed, not fear, recognition. The man's mouth flattened, steadied. He lifted the empty cup toward his own face, drank the lesson, put it down. Around us, shoulders settled 2 notches. Kale's grin sharpened. Some will still want the play. They want her to crack you open. They don't understand they're warmed by the same fire they want doused. They'll learn or stop enjoying warmth, Darius said. Era placed a dish of herb paste near his plate and reached for his wrist as if to smear a line across a healing scrape. Duty and intimacy shared a blade. Jealousy stretched out inside me without permission, ugly and hot. My body recognized its shape before my mind named it. Rhea bristled in a hard wave. Mine, she snapped, not staking claim to him, but to the right to choose touch when his mark already answered too much. The snarl wasn't for Era. It was for the fact of the world. Darius didn't need the paste. He let her hand hover and then moved his arm aside to take a cup Kyle slid over. Message understood. I own my wounds. I own who touches them. Era's nostrils flared a fraction. She set the bowl with cruel neatness and worked twice as fast on the next task. My pulse climbed too fast, like winter water thrown on a hot stone. The bond tightened another notch. The hall tilted. Fen breathed through the seam. Not loud, not gloating, simply there. Mine. Be still. Rhea hit him like a storm and the cliff didn't move. The storm learned its edges and came back snarling. Pride bleeding. More furious for having found limits. I reached for my cup because the choice mattered. The wine steadied my mouth against grit. I set it down. The wood under my palm felt too warm. Kale leaned on his forearms, voice low enough to need attention to carry it. Your wolf is loud. I can almost hear her from here. You'll hear her with your bones if you get closer. He smiled as if served a new dish. Darius ignored him not because he hadn't heard, but because prioritizing is also a weapon. Further down, 3 older fighters began a low song built of 3 notes and an old rhythm. Men hummed because they knew better than to sing. The sound stitched rafters to floor. I breathed to it and found my hands again. The moment held. Then the bond surged, heat rolling under the bandage. The pulse that wasn't mine hammered in my mouth and throat. The room narrowed to the thumbprint place where his teeth had been. I gripped the table because I would not grip him. The wood took my fingers like a secret. The opposite picture flashed and I hated it. My hand on his wrist. My head tipped. Private surrender. Under a public claim. Rhea howled once. The sound didn't leave my body. It rang inside bone and made my teeth ache. Darius turned half an inch. He didn't look at me. His hand slid under the table and closed on my wrist. The grip was exact, unhurried, the pressure you use to keep a glass from sliding off a shelf while you do something else. The bond jumped like a wire hit by current. The world snapped into correct focus. Colors too bright for 2 beats, sound too sharp. Breathe, he told me inside. In, hold out. I wanted to throw the count back at him. I followed it because not following would have made the room smaller and my body more foolish than my pride could afford. In, hold, out. Panic didn't vanish. It gained edges. Shame stayed and stopped being the only thought. Kale watched his hand on mine as if he'd found a new blade in the arsenal. Useful, he observed, not mocking. Practical romance. Era's mouth thinned. She poured for a man with a torn sleeve, then stood still for 1 wrong second before doubling her speed. Leora's eyes stayed on my face. She said nothing. That was the gift. Darius didn't release me. He left his hand where it was because the lesson used that tool. With his other hand, he took more bread, ate like a man who has been hungry before and learned discipline. He spoke to the table with the same calm he used on the wall. Stop measuring me with wishes, use work. If you have a challenge, stand, speak, choose correction or blood. If you imagine you can move me through her, fail here and live with the failure where your friends can see it. No one stood. The few who had wanted to test their courage decided to practice with quieter risks first. The song shifted key. Someone laughed at the wrong moment and apologized with a shrug that didn't ask forgiveness. Fen pressed once, satisfied the way patient creatures get satisfied. No gloat. Only certainty. Rhea snarled again, exhausted by her own refusal to soften and sickened by the part that kept answering. My eyes stung. I blinked it down. Darius's thumb moved along the inside of my wrist. Not a caress, a count. 2 beats, then his pulse under my skin, then mine matching. Shame tried to climb back up my throat. I swallowed it and let it sit like a stone I intended to throw later. Kale bumped his cup lightly into the circle our elbows made. Drink to the roof again, and to women who learn a leash, can double as a lifeline when the room tilts. Use your cup for your own survival, I told him. I have other ways to breathe. I drank. The wine burned and cooled. Era returned with a dish of salted berries and set it between Darius and me without looking at either. He drew it to the middle, a law. Shared, not stolen. The feast drifted into stories that didn't require proof. Plates emptied. Bowls lost their steam. Men stood in twos and threes and walked off into night the way soot lifts at the end of a burn. Darius let the hall relax around him without moving. He kept my wrist until the last story worth hearing died, and the last watcher with too much curiosity remembered a different duty. Then he let go. The sudden lack of pressure felt like a cliff where there had been a wall. My skin remembered the shape of his hand the way water remembers a stone that has sat in it too long. He rose. The benches nearest echoed the decision. He looked down the table one last time, and any men who still had the problem of their courage found better problems. Come, he said along the link. Not a command, not a request. Something older that pulled, because it already lived in bone. I stood because I intended to, because I refused the theater of resisting when I meant to move anyway, because Leora's eyes told me she would sleep only if I did. She dipped her chin in a small salute that promised she would wake if I did not return. Kel gathered the slate he'd never finished reading and the grin that lived between weapon and delight. He fell in behind like a shadow that knows when to lengthen. Era cleared a row of dishes with more attention than the task required. Hands sure, shoulders locked in a posture that admitted nothing. Darius didn't touch me. He didn't need to. The bond set the pace. The hall let us pass. The stairwell breathed cooler air and copper light. The door closed on the last of the feast smell. Footsteps folded into the hush. Fen moved inside me with the patient confidence of a creature who knows its den. Rhea trotted the edges of my anger, teeth still bared, held up by grit because collapse would be a worse insult than obedience. I kept step with the man I refused to love and followed him into the deep, my wrist tingling with a ghost of pressure, my mouth tasting like decisions I would owe interest on by morning. The stairwell kept the last of the hall's warmth and squeezed it into the stone. A single brazier threw copper light across the curve. Darius didn't slow. The bond tugged with each turn, a steady pull under my ribs that made the rest of the fort feel like it revolved around him. Footsteps trailed behind until the landing. He glanced back once. You're finished. I'm never finished. Kyle stopped at the post anyway, smile tilted, hands easy as a man who enjoys waiting for trouble to come to him. If you want to be useful, Darius said without looking again, make a seam complain. Kale's laugh followed us down one step and then faded. His door opened on heat and clean smoke. Weapons hung in order. The bed sat under the narrow window like a decision waiting to be enforced. He shut the door with the simple finality of a sentence ending. Face me. I did because staring at the wall would have been surrender, and I refused to offer that shape of back. The distance between us was short enough that I could feel the heat off his skin. The mark at my throat warmed as if the room leaned closer. My hands wanted to lift either to push him away or hold him still. I left them open at my sides. You're going to lecture me about table manners, I said. I didn't throw anything. For a first feast, that qualifies as grace. We'll get to manners, begin with honesty. Choose a topic. Jealousy. The word landed like a blunt tool. Effective, not delicate. I don't waste jealousy on you. Your body already did. Silence thickened. The brazier whispered as a knot surrendered a last breath of sap. I held his gaze, and hated that the second beat under my own heartbeat had settled to his pace the moment the door closed. You watched Era's hand, he went on. You watched the inch where her fingers almost touched my wrist. Your breath changed. Your shoulders lifted. You counted it as an insult, then tried to make the count disappear. I watched a healer dramatize her supplies, and you watched a woman test your patience. She can keep the test, Can you? Rhea dug claws under my ribs. Do not give him the word. If he wants it, he can choke on silence. You like accuracy, I said. Fine. I hated that she reached. I hated that you let her try. I hated that the room waited to see if you would reward it. I hated my pulse for knowing your answer before you moved. Good, now we can begin. I didn't agree to a lesson. You live here. You are agreeing to lessons with every breath. He stepped to the window slit and rested a hand on stone. He looked at the black seam of wall, the way men study their own palms when they need proof of what work has done to them. The quiet stretched until I could hear that second heartbeat more clearly than my own thoughts. You do this to yourself, I said. You fill the room with your pace and then accuse me of matching it. I'm not accusing, I'm counting. I'm not an abacus. Your material I intend to build with what holds. Say build again and I will break every beam in this room. Try. Something in me snapped at the calm. I crossed the space and swung for his face without elegance. He caught my wrist mid-arc, heat and bone closing the world. My left hand cut for his throat and found his other palm waiting. I drove a knee for his ribs, his hip met it and didn't move. I raked for his jaw and scraped cheekbone instead. The line of his mouth didn't change. He let me spend exactly enough and nothing more. Again, you want bruises for trophies? I want truth. I dropped low for his knee, angry and ugly. He stepped through and walked me into the wall with trained weight. His hands pinned my wrists beside my shoulders. Exact, not cruel, not gentle. Stone took my spine. Heat erased the gap. The bond pulled tight. Rhea snarled. Fen stood up inside the link like thunder, deciding where it will go. Let go. Answer first. You are not a priest and I am not a confession. You are my mate, he said, unadorned. You are also my enemy. Your honesty is a tool. I use tools to keep you alive and my house in order. I don't love you. I don't ask devotion. I require accuracy. I am not jealous. The lie flared across the link like a brand. Heat burned under the bandage. Shame followed like a slip from a bad grip. Again. You want me to say it and kneel to it. You want the easiest victory a man can take and call it instruction. I want you to stop lying to yourself. His grip tightened a degree, clarifying, not punishing. Jealousy is a map. It points at value. Use it. I won't give you the satisfaction, Garrett. You'll give yourself breath. Breathe. I am breathing. Breathe the count I gave you. Stop trying to own air. I own obedience when it keeps you standing. The order slid along the link with efficient certainty. I obeyed because I wanted air, not because it was his. In, hold, out. My ribs steadied against the stone. The room widened 1 inch. His heat didn't. Release me. When you answer once without the lie. You want a word badly? Here's one. No. Not a word. A truth. He lowered his head until his mouth hovered beside the place he had marked. Heat bled toward skin, not contact, the promise of it. The bond hummed, as if the room had tuned itself to a single note. Rhea shook with fury and effort. Fen pressed along her spine with patient weight. Mine, Fen growled. Not loud. Absolute. Not yours, Rhea answered, voice gray with strain. We belong where we choose. Choose, Fen returned, terrible and patient. I turned my head to break the line of heat. He didn't chase, he waited. My pulse betrayed me with 3 matching beats before wrenching free. You think this is courtship because power sounds righteous in your mouth. This is law. We answer law or we break on it and waste blood cleaning the floor. Maybe the floor deserves better company. Maybe you do. It wasn't soft, it wasn't apology. It was value stated like fact, and my body wanted to be valued by a man who didn't lie. I hated that impulse so much I could have chewed it to pulp. Let go. When we're finished. We are finished when I say. We're finished when you hear what you refused at the table. You think I refused anything. You refused yourself. His voice stayed low and relentless. You refused the fact that when another hand reached, your body wanted to put teeth in that hand, not to claim me. Your right to choose touch when my mark already answers too much. Accuracy hits like a thrown stone. You don't dodge it. You decide what to do after it lands. That's not jealousy, I said. That's rage. It's both. Good. Feel both. Use both. You keep calling me useful like I'm a tool you take down when you want. You're a weapon. I won't let you blunt yourself pretending to be a symbol. He shifted his grip so one hand locked both my wrists. The other traced a line on the wall beside my head and stopped when his knuckles hit stone. He still didn't touch my skin. My body didn't know the difference. The bond brightened in a slow rise, dawn through thick curtains. Heat spread from the mark, ran under my sternum. I felt his breath one step removed, deep and sure, and then the heavier throb behind it. Want, not imagined, not mine. Stop. No. I didn't ask for this, and you didn't ask for breath, he said. You take it. Take this as information. Learn its shape so it doesn't ambush you when I need you clear. Rhea staggered, caught herself on claws. The sound inside me wasn't a snarl and wasn't surrender. It was a quiet, made of decision, need, and rage. Do not drown. Map it. Fen pressed, possessive and certain. Mine. Stand down and let the den hold. Not yours, Rhea answered steadier. But I use what I must to live. The desire came like a tide. It touched every place I had armored and asked if warmth could be useful. I locked my jaw until my eyes watered and counted through it, half his count and half mine. Shame tried to eat the air. I fed it law instead, the one that says a wolf doesn't quit a fight because her body wants what her pride hates. He watched without smiling, his restraint a different kind of dominance, more brutal for being controlled. He let the wave crest and fall. He let me hear how much of him wanted and did not turn it into command. That was its own command. I trembled once, more from fury than need. The worst of it drained. Enough. Now you know. Knowledge buys time. You turned me into your experiment. I turned us into something honest about where it bleed. You think this helps me? It keeps you from breaking at a table full of men who would pay for your collapse with a story they never stop telling. You're generous with help I hate. I'm generous with anything that keeps you standing. His hand opened. My wrists were free. The absence of pressure felt like stepping off a stair you miscounted. I held the wall because moving toward him would be admission, and moving away would be pretend flight the bond would measure and mark. Tell me what you want, he said, and I want you gone. Accuracy. I want your hands off me. Accuracy. I want to break your rules until rules fail. Closer. I want my body back, I said, dragging each word over gravel. I want to stop answering what you control. Good, he said. Begin by naming how it answers so you can learn where to claw. You want a catalog. I want you civilized enough to know where you bleed. I closed my eyes and forced the list because drowning in denial would be worse. When you enter a room, heat climbs my throat. When you stand close, my lungs try to match your count. When you tell me to breathe, my bones obey before pride does. When Era reached, I wanted the world to understand there's a cost for touching what I haven't permitted. When Kale smirks, I want to rearrange his face. When you set your hand on my wrist, my body stood down even as my mind plotted where to bite next. Better, he said, now the part you hate her. I'm already there. Desire. The word stripped the air. The easiest lie rose and died. I don't want you soft, I said, savage with honesty. Soft feels like a trick. I don't want you kind. Kind from men who win rots. But when you fix on something and hold still with it, I want to stand closer. When the link says mine, I want to throw you down and take that heat and make it answer me while I bite until you understand what permission costs. Good, now you have something worth fighting with instead of poses. Release me from this room. You'll sleep. I'll sleep when I decide. You'll sleep because you have work at dawn. He stepped back at last. The air cooled where his body had been. One brazier went dark, then another, until the room held a lower light that turned beams and steel into silhouettes. The bond stayed awake under my skin, patient as a second pulse. One more thing, he said. Stop pretending that wanting me makes you weak. It makes you dangerous. Directed desire is a blade. Misused, it's a rope. Stop naming me blades and ropes. I name you what you are because truth holds better than comfort. You want to deny the bond. I won't let you. You want to drown in it. I won't let you. You'll learn to run inside it without losing breath. I don't run leashed. You run better when you stop wasting strength testing the line every third step. There are places to pull. You'll find them by failing until you don't. Instruction dressed as threat. Law dressed as instruction. The fort breathed beyond the stone. The house kept its hum. Outside, footsteps paused and moved on. Kale's patience finding a new problem. Inside, Rhea lay down without closing her eyes. Fen stretched and stayed awake. I won't break, I said again, because nails hold better when you drive them twice. You won't, you'll bend, you'll learn the angle that serves you, you'll use it. Tell yourself that when I bite you, I will. He crossed the room until heat blurred my focus again. Bite, claw, fight. I prefer you fierce. Hear me and learn it where memory doesn't lie. He paused long enough that the link tightened of its own accord. When he spoke, his voice carried no triumph, only certainty. You are mine. The bond flared. Heat ran from the mark down my chest and met the heavy throb of his want without warning. I felt his heartbeat inside my sternum, impossible and undeniable. For 3 beats, we were the same rhythm and the same refusal wrapped around it. Panic hit bright. Fury rode it like a rider, and I loved the fury more than breath. Rhea tore at the link with every tooth, not to sever, to feel edges, to map cuts for later. Fen held, patient and certain, and that certainty enraged me most. Get out of me. No. I will never submit. You already didn't. You survived. The room steadied a fraction. My hands shook once and quit. I breathed, not because he ordered it, because collapsing would serve him more than me. He watched the refusal and looked satisfied in a way that promised 1,000 arguments and 1,000 nights mapping truths I didn't want. Sleep, I won't sleep for you. Then sleep in spite of me. I went to the bed because standing to make a point would have spent strength I needed. Linen met my shoulders. The beam above ran straight and exact. He stood at the foot of the bed with arms folded, a sentry who belonged to himself first. The bond pulsed relentless, steady, like a drum calling packs to war before either of us had names. I shut my eyes and bit down on a promise that tasted like iron. I will not yield. The second pulse answered without words and refused to leave my chest. The last thing I felt before sleep took me was not the warmth of the room, but his heartbeat inside mine, wrong and inexorable, and the shape of his certainty filling the dark like weather I could fight and not yet change. Pre-dawn pressed the fort into a held breath. The sky was a dark seam about to split. The bond woke me before the bell with that steady pull under my ribs that had learned to move when he moved. Darius was already up. Metal whispered as he buckled his belt. I sat, the linen cool across my shoulders, and watched the thin smear of smoke hanging along the north ridge like a sentence waiting for a verb. Up. Boots, belt. No noise. The words crossed the link. Close his breath. I stood because defying physics in the dark only makes you stumble. Leather kissed buckles, fingers found familiar knots, and the cold steadied me. Rhea shook herself hard inside my chest and kept her teeth bared. Mine. Fen's voice slid through the seam like a heavy body turning over in its den. Not yours, we belong where we choose. Rhea's answer came hot and fast, but she paced after, not before. Darius opened the door without looking back. We took the stair that unwound around stone and copper light, and he did not touch me. He didn't have to. The bond did the small work of keeping me close. His certainty did the rest. Wind found my face at the parapet. The wall walked the ridge like a spine of old bone. Below, the yard held to its geometry of shadows and habit. 2 sentries straightened because their bodies recognized his stride before their eyes did. Report. Smoke on the far ridge, the nearer answered, voice steady in that quiet that belongs to competent men. Thin, pine and tallow, not our pitch. No movement at the ditch. Hooks on the east thorn line have multiplied. I tasted the air. The smoke lay too clean. There was a chemical bite under the pine that did not belong to our stores. They're measuring us, not pressing, I said. His glance cut to me and away, approval without praise. He shifted a finger at the sentries. Do not blow a horn. Change stance every 20 breaths. If your count breaks, trade posts and wake your relief with a lie that keeps him angry. You will not let the wall teach you boredom. We walked. The stones kept their heat from yesterday's sun, proof that this house did not waste what it could keep. Cale rose from the south stair with a slate under his arm and chalk on his fingers like a craftsman who'd stolen them from a school. An inner door fell in love last night, he said as he matched our pace. Hinges oiled, wedge shaved, latch sighing when touched. If someone wanted to hear it sing, it forgot how. Which door? Service corridor behind the grain racks, the damp-breathing one. Who touched it? The hinge will talk sooner than the guard. The guard has coins he did not own yesterday and a sweetheart with new boots. Leash length. How generous are we feeling? 1. Hunt rot, not sport. If your fun costs me a finger, I take your hand. Cale's grin sharpened into something useful. Consequences, my favorite spice. We reached the west tower. The old hornkeeper did not turn. She did not need to. She felt him and sat straighter. The smear of smoke held its polite line on the ridge. A sourer scent lifted from the yard below, bitter and quick. Not ours, I murmured. He pivoted his attention toward the inner parapet. Era stood by a post, braid neat, hands on a small vial. She tipped a measure into a cup for a sentry whose jaw worked too fast for the rest of his face. We dropped down 2 flights. Darius did not speak until our shadow lay across her hands. Names. Jairus, Gate 2, Era answered, setting the cup on the stone in front of him. He doubled his watch to cover a partner with fever. He will fall asleep standing. I am preventing that. What is in the cup? A stimulant. A small dose. That smell is not small, I said. You will keep him upright while his eyes stop looking. He will obey and miss corners. Era measured me without blinking. Some of us work while others perform. Some of us know the difference between support and sabotage. Darius didn't bother to look at either of us. His gaze remained on Jairus's too quick jaw. Throw it out, salt as water, wake his partner whether he coughs or curses. If the partner cannot stand, tie him to a post and let him sleep where you can see him. You will not drug my eyes. A muscle moved in Era's cheek. As you wish. You wish for exceptions, you will not get them. She tipped the cup and poured the dose over the wall. The liquid vanished into the pre-dawn like an admission. She placed a basin and a stack of cloth at our feet, utterly neat. For those who want bread without the taste of blood, keep the vials for the work that bleeds on purpose, I said under my breath. She did not answer. Her glance hit my bandage and slid away. We climbed again. The fort's breath thickened. Braziers woke in the pits. Quiet footsteps threaded through the barracks. As we crossed the east turn, movement at ground level caught my eye. Leora walked into the open under the laundry lines with a small bundle at her hip, head down, the posture of a woman counting lint for inventory. She scratched the back of her wrist with 3 fingers in a motion so small it barely existed. Trap. The old sign slotted into me and clicked. I scanned the ground around the supply hall the way you test ice by reading its shine. Tracks doubled at the service door. The sweep marks around the hinge were too thorough. She sees it, I sent. I saw it before you woke, he returned. Now the house sees it, that is better. You love when the house learns your vector. I love when the roof holds. The north gate opened into pale land, thorn lines bristling like fur at attention. Out beyond the ditch, a figure broke from the ridge, running low. A silhouette cut from a story every wall has seen. The desperate cousin, the messenger, the man who knows a path inside. Two shadows lagged, then surged, the rhythm of a trap teaching itself to walk. Wait, he told the archers whose bodies had already lifted bows. His voice caught their muscles. The first runner reached the ditch and fell to his knees, with his face turned to be red from height. The second slid along the bank and knotted himself in shadow. The third paused and turned his head just long enough to show a profile with hill-born angles I hated on instinct. They want you to lean. I have other legs, he said. Kale. The beta was at our flank like the wall had cut him from its stones. Present. Take 2 to the service hall, leash length only. If the door sings, break the instrument. Bring the player. I do not care if he arrives as noise or as lesson. Music at sunrise, a man could get used to this. He was gone. Darius stepped up onto the crenel and let the wind comb his hair back from his face. He studied the field like a man who refuses to forgive himself for assuming he recognizes an old trick. The first runner's cry thinned into the polite shape of a false alarm. The second went still in a place where arrows could not find him. The third watched for movement with patience that would have looked like fear to a child. Hillborn, I said. Yeah. He did not turn. Selene. The bond took my name and tightened. I came up alongside him. Take 4, he said. Cut the line behind those 3. Use the crooked cap at the south inner to drop unseen. Wind is with you. Do not return with a story. Return with proof. I will bring you a lack of breath if lack is what you want. Bring me silence where there was a plan. Rhea surged inside me and shook rain out of her coat that wasn't there. Work. Work, I agreed. 2 were waiting by the gate when I reached the inner run because men learn the step of an order that comes from Darius. Nyla had soot on her cheek and eyes that noticed small things. Bragan was a quiet wall with patience. A third ghosted from under the laundry line, a strip of cloth tied around her hair and a knife in her boot. Name: Mara. I fold better when I know what I am folding. You are folding enemies and putting them where they will not wrinkle. Her mouth tipped a fraction. We slid along the inner wall to the crooked cap joint we had mapped yesterday when he made me walk and count. My knee settled into the flaw. Fingers found holds. The drop looked easy, because it wanted to be used. Easy kills wolves. We moved anyway. Nyla went first, weight hidden in skill. Bragan followed with mass that told the wall a story it liked. Mara breathed once, and then moved with the muscle memory of someone who had learned balance before she learned to write. I took the rear, and the ditch embraced us with the smell of old water and new weeds. The first runner's voice scratched at the throat. The second's hand held a knife wrong on purpose. The third had patience I respected. I gave Nyla a look. 2 fingers crooked. She melted along the bank like she had been water in a past life and would be again. Bragan went where he would be heard and used that noise like bait. Mara planted herself where the third shadow would want to be once he started moving. We waited for the wind to ride up the ditch and carry the first wrong sound away. Now. Neela took the knife man's breath almost gently, a single clean line under the jaw that saved everyone time. Bragan's hand closed on the first runner's ankle and dragged him out of his performance. The cry clipped off. The ditch swallowed the end. Mara let the third believe he had space for a heartbeat, and then stepped into that space so completely he never found where it went. I held my knife until the last man's coat flashed that telltale shape and the small horn slid into his hand. He meant to blow a note that says broken breath so the ridge could laugh and call us soft. My left hand covered his mouth. My right took his wrist and turned the horn into a quiet toy on the grass. He fought like a man who had been promised a story. I denied him breath and plot. He went still. We looked for anything we had missed. Bryggen took a scrap of leather from a boot sole, seared with a curl like a hook. The same arrogance hung on our thorns. Mara pulled a cheap signet with the Winterwolf stamp and raised an eyebrow. Proof enough to use, she said. Proof enough to hate. We moved back up the seam. The wind kept our noise and did kind things with it. The inner yard breathed as if all of this had been a cough and not a choice. Darius stood where we left him. That fact settled my spine more than it should have. Cale appeared from the service hall with a rabbit of a man by the scruff, cuffs black with oil and eyes sliding. Cale's grin was a thin knife with manners. The door sang in the key of bribery, he said. He tried to teach me the refrain. I prefer my music in tune. Darius did not spare the prisoner a glance. His eyes read the set of my shoulders first, and the signet second. He held out his hand. I laid the ring and the hook-scarred scrap on his palm and kept my face still while the bond purred low under my sternum with infuriating satisfaction. Thoughtful, Cale observed, nodding to the ring. They put their crest on anything they are proud of. Pride travels faster than brains. They are lazy or confident, I said. Confidence makes men put fingers near hinges, he replied, amused. How many breathing problems did you solve? 3. I will miss their horn. Darius dropped the ring back into my hand. Keep it where you will step on it and remember, not under your pillow, under your boot. Under my boot. He did not mount the dais or call a council. He sat on the low bench by the armory threshold the way a man sets a tool back where it belongs so he can find it again, and in the same motion he touched the place at his right. He did not look at me. He did not need to. I took that place because pretending not to understand would have been theater. A ripple moved the yard. It made no sound and still I heard it. Leora watched from the infirmary stoop, eyes steady and mouth a line that meant pride and caution both. Era's jaw set in a shape that would ache later. Cale's grin did not widen. It grew saticified and quiet, like a craftsman who had seen a beam sit square. She sits here, Darius said. Challenges to her sit with me. If you require the feel of the cost, choose a day when you are already bleeding, so we can save time. No one reached for a weapon, even the wind waited. Assignments, he continued, tying knots with words. Kyle, your leash stays one length. Names behind those coins by noon bell. If they are dull, make them brighter by removing layers. Era, water and salt, not vials. If I smell your stimulant on a breath, I dose you and you will work through it in my sight. Leora, the west stair wants wraps, your count is short by 8. Nyla, Bryggen, Mara with Selene. Repeat what worked until you are bored. Then teach it. The rest of you, eat. If I catch a hand shaking a cup and naming it courage, I take the cup and the hand. The basin Era had placed at our feet caught the work from his fingers. He rinsed without looking down and the water ran away between the stones the way a day runs whether you like its shape or not. Leora crossed to us with a small bundle and a glance that asked the question she could not speak here. Where were you? Cutting the last page out of a bad story. Good, that story loves hooks, huh? Keep your head down if it tries to read itself aloud. Her mouth did not smile. Her eyes did. Era set bread at the edge of the bench. The loaf was perfect, a thing grown and baked in the shadow of steel. For your hands before you touch the map. Your generosity is noted. It is procedure, she answered, precise. If you would like generosity, ask someone else. I let the bread cool under my fingers and watched the way her attention slid over me, as if I were a stain you have to scrub around. Cale lingered, slate against his thigh. Pretty seat, does it splinter in some weather? It holds. My concerns are expensive, I charge an instruction. Bring a receipt. He laughed once, low and pleased, and took his rabbit to the place where consequences learn how to walk. Short review, Darius said to the men who had learned how to make a circle without admitting it. They tested patience and doors. They learned patience holds and doors do not. We keep our count. We keep our wall. We make them pay tuition when they insist on school. Eat now, work after. If there is an enemy within these stones, he will not like my hunger. He rose. The yard stood straighter in the air he left behind, and the ridge did not look so smug with its polite smoke. He did not glance at me. He did not need to. The place at his right had said everything he intended to say. The bond hummed, warm and terrible, and Rhea prowled inside me, furious and proud, wanting more work. You belong to yourself, she told me. I do, I told her, and I use what keeps the roof over what is mine. Fen answered with that patient certainty he wears like a collar he made for himself. Mine. It did not choke in that moment. It felt like a wall with an opening I could use. When the map came out on the rough table, he tipped his chin once and the fort learned the new line of the morning. My seat at his right, law nailed into place without a speech. The smell of bread and iron, making a language the pack understood. Outside the wall, the ridge smoked and pretended this had all been about air. Inside, the house decided which pulse it would follow, and I matched the rhythm because I had chosen the cost. Day broke the way steel brightens under a whetstone. The ridge wore its line of smoke like a smirk. The fort moved with purpose, not hurry. Darius stood with one palm braced on the rough map, eyes on the supply hall. Attention, like a held blade. The bond hummed steady under my ribs, not asking permission to exist. I kept my stance and let my hands remember how to move when outcomes mattered more than opinions. Kale strode in from the service wing with a strip of cloth tied around his upper arm to slow a thin leak of blood, slate tucked under his other elbow, grin trimmed to utility. Your hinge sings less now. I taught it the key of honesty. How many verses? 2 names. 1 set of coins. 1 door that will scream if anyone kisses it wrong again. The boy wants to be useful in exchange for keeping both hands. Does he get both? He earns 1 now, 1 later. Darius listened without lifting his head from the map. You will not turn this into theater. Bring me the names before noon bell. If they don't fit a pattern I can use, you will create one I can. And stop enjoying your bandage. I enjoy the reminder, Kale answered, then flicked a look toward me. If you are taking a tour of the smoke, I want to borrow your shadow. It behaves better than mine. You want Nyla and Bragan, not me. I want the person the Alpha points to. You have me until he points elsewhere. Drums began, soft and quick, carried down the inner corridor like a heartbeat that had learned to speak. Smoke didn't wait for permission. It found the seam under the supply hall door and curled along the floor, low and stubborn. Someone shouted from inside in a voice that knew how to get attention without inspiring panic. Darius lifted his head. The room felt taller when he did. Kyle with me to the door. Selene, take your team and hold the southern corridor. No horns. Anyone on the wrong side of a wedge meets the floor. Leora appeared at the corridor mouth with a basket clamped to her hip and a strip of linen held between her teeth. She didn't flinch at the smoke. She looked at Darius and then at me, reading the placement of bodies, the way she reads an unhappy wound. She moved to the staging table and began laying out water, salt, and clean cloth in neat stacks like small oaths. Nyla snapped her hair back with a twist and fell in beside me. Bragan hefted a pry bar that had started life as an honest tool and wanted to finish as a weapon. Mara checked the inside of her boot and then her knuckles. Quiet satisfaction running over her face when she found both exactly where she left them. Smoke crawled over the stones in a fox pelt. The corridor beyond the supply hall's side door threw heat like a threat. From inside we heard wood crackle and the ugly, hungry sound of fire finding oil. Darius reached the main doors first. The crossbar was wedged with a plank that should not have been there. He set both hands to it and lifted with a steady, unshowy strength that made the wood change its mind about being a problem. Kale shoved the doors inward with his shoulder, ducking low to let smoke pass over him instead of into him. On me, Darius told the men on the threshold, 2 and 2. Treat the floor like a liar. Eyes right for the racks. Kale, Check the corridor behind for a second wedge. Selene, take the south and hold it. If fire eats there, stop it at the throat. I planted at the southern mouth with Neela and Mara while Bragan ran for the pump handles. Heat licked our shins. Smoke rolled like a slow animal trying to press us flat. The first shelf in our corridor hadn't caught. The second had. Flames climbed sacks of grain as if the hunger inside them had been waiting for a reason. I ripped a blanket from the emergency hook and soaked it in the trough before throwing it over the rack. The hiss was a living thing. Nyla beat down a tongue of fire with a flatboard until sparks died. Leora's voice carried from behind without crossing the distance. Breathe low. If your lungs burn, you're inhaling panic, not smoke. Useful, I answered, then pulled my shirt collar up across my mouth and kept moving. Something crashed on the far side. Kale's curse came short, followed by the knock of wood against bone and a thud that sounded like a man learning gravity. Darius's silhouette crossed the central aisle with the exact certainty of a map acted out by muscle and scar. He didn't look where not to step, his body already knew. He vanished into smoke. The bond didn't. It tugged once, informing me that he was exactly where he intended. A figure rushed our corridor with a bucket and terror as a plan. Mara caught the handle and redirected it to the flames instead of the floor. The woman blinked, then nodded once as the water turned to steam against the sacks. Another figure followed, coughing, face gray under soot. Era entered behind them with 2 apprentices and a roll of bandage. Her mouth was set in a line that promised permanent resentment. She took one look at me at the head of the corridor and decided she could smell the shape of a grievance. You placed her here, she told Darius without turning, as if the air would carry the blame to him more quickly if it didn't have to go through me. She blocked the servants' run last night. They listened to her before me. This is the result. I blocked a door that had been tampered with, I answered. They listened because their eyes work. Era ignored the correction. She pointed at a boy who had been her assistant 2 days ago and a liability today. Oil stained his cuffs to the elbow. His eyes flicked with the quick math of men who want to outrun confession. Her tone sharpened like a scalpel. Show him your hands. The boy paled, but he obeyed. Darius walked out of smoke just in time to catch the display. He didn't look at Era's face. He looked at the cuffs, then at the wedge propped by the far door, then at the boy's boots which held grit from the east trench. You oiled the inner door, Darius said, not asking. You left the wedge. You fed this hall to smoke. The boy swallowed the wrong way. I didn't think it would go this far. She said it would be a drill. Every gaze in the corridor shifted toward Era. She did not flinch. Her chin lifted by the smallest increment. I told him fatigue would kill more men than fire and that fear keeps hands alert. We are short on discipline. A controlled test breaks habits. Controlled, Kale echoed from the other door, pushing a smoldering rag into a bucket with his boot. You wedged a hall that holds half our winter with a plank meant for shelves and drugged a sentry so he would miss corners. That's a test. The kind where the patient dies if the math is wrong. Era's look could have cut linen. You are not the Alpha. No, Darius said, and the word felt like iron cooling. I am. Judgment now. The boy, 2 seasons bound to labor outside the walls. He keeps both hands. If he runs, he returns without choices. Era, stripped of authority, until I return it. Today, you work under Leora, and you touch nothing that isn't cloth, water, or salt. Era's breath lifted once, so small it could have been a twitch. She bowed her head just enough to count as obedience, without resembling respect. Leora moved to stand beside her, posture steady, eyes calm, in a way I recognized from moments when she braced me against my worst temper. We will need your hands, Leora told her softly, if we are to keep everyone's feet. Era's jaw worked, but her voice held. Then give me cloth. She turned to the nearest wounded man and began to bind a blistered forearm with an efficiency that belonged to skill long practiced. Jealousy didn't burn on her face. Ambition did. It made a different kind of heat. Smoke thickened for a last angry breath and then retreated. Bragan's second blanket smothered the stubborn tongues at the rack's base. Water ran toward the drain, dirty and satisfied. Darius stepped into the yard with his sleeves wet to the elbows and no ash on his face. He looked up at the ridge. A line of hill-born shadows stood just beyond bowshot, arms folded, the posture of men who like to measure other men with other people's smoke. A single figure lifted a hand as if to ask for a morning bargain. "Come down and be corrected," Darius called, voice level carrying. "Bring a witness if you need a story to go home with." The figure did not move. A horn note drifted thinly across the distance, the mockery kind. Darius moved to the center of the yard and stood in the open with his arms at his sides, the least dramatic form of invitation I had ever seen. The enemy did not take it. They watched a heartbeat longer, then stepped back from the edge, smoke sliding behind them like a curtain. Cale whistled low. They came to count, not to bleed. Rude. "They learned enough," Darius answered, "and not enough. They learned our order and not our reach." His gaze moved to the men gathering in the yard, to the faces learning how to read what the morning had written. He turned on his heel and mounted the 2 steps to the armory threshold. He didn't need a dais. He used a piece of wood, built to hold weight. "There will be no debate about the seat to my right," he said, loud enough to make conversation kneel. "Selene sits there. She is my mate and my second in bond. If you have questions, you may keep them as pets or you may fight me for answers. Choose the hour carefully. I prefer to make examples after breakfast." A ripple moved through the yard like wind through wheat, not a murmur. A body language that said a decision had found its place. 2 young wolves who had worn too much bravado since last winter looked at each other and decided to work on a different problem. An older man with a scar over his lip let his shoulders drop a degree and nodded, almost to himself. Leora's mouth didn't move. Her eyes eased. Ira's hands tightened on the cloth she was wrapping until the veins in her wrist stood. Cale leaned on the edge of a barrel and watched the way eyes traveled. A generous clarification. Saves time and teeth. "Teeth get used either way," I answered. "True, but now they know which throat bleeds them back." He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The line of his mouth meant approval, measured in outcomes. The bond warmed under my breastbone. Rhea paced, furious at the way pride and irritation wanted to shake hands in my chest. "Do not enjoy being named second," she muttered. "I will enjoy using it," I told her. "Enjoyment and obedience are not the same." Fen pressed once, pleased. "Mine." "Use that word like a wall, not a chain," Rhea warned, and I nodded inside where no one else could see. After the hall had been aired, after the last steaming bucket emptied and the last shelf cooled to a normal temperature, Darius gave orders without drama that moved people back into work. The boy with oil on his cuffs was led away to learn the rhythm of labor beyond the walls. Era followed Leora to the infirmary with her jaw set and her hands very clean. She found me before the midday bell in the cool corridor where the heat had been. Her voice stayed low enough to belong only to us, which meant someone might still be listening. "I won't compete with you for him," she said, and the words came out like steel. "Not surrender. I will compete with you for the house." "The house is his," I answered, "and now partly mine to guard. Then we understand each other. I won't undermine his law. I will build edges inside it where your choices cost you more than mine. You're welcome to try, but if you play with fire at my door again, I'll put your hand in the bucket before it knows water or oil." Her stare did not waver. "Do not threaten me with tools I invented. I will not poison him. I will not poison the pack. But I will make sure anyone who stands near him must work twice as hard as I do to be allowed to stay." "Then work. I prefer rivals who earn their air." She inclined her head once and left without looking back. Rhea watched her go with the slow blink of a predator who recognizes another predator and files the detail for later. Cale intercepted me near the yard with a strip of meat he hadn't yet decided to eat or use as a prop. The blood had been cooked off into a kind of honest brown. "For the record," he said, "I like you better in smoke than in chairs. You make fewer people talk and more people move. For the record, I like you better bleeding than smirking. He glanced at the sling he'd tied and grinned in earnest. Bleeding is a compliment in this house. Where do you want your keys, second? Locked where I can find them. Darius appeared at my shoulder as if he had never left. The sense of him clogged the air and cleaned it, both at once. You will audit the supply locks with Kyle, he said. Today and tomorrow. You will count hinges, wedges, and men. You will make me a map of where the house thinks it is weaker than it is. Authority in that domain is yours. If someone refuses to answer your questions, he tells you his guilt. If someone answers too quickly, he tells you his fear. Use both. I met his eyes because not meeting them would have been a worse admission than any response. You give me rope, I expect a net, and if I tangle myself, you won't. If you do, the fall teaches you more than my hand can. That should sound like care. It isn't, it's economy. The bond pushed a hard, steady pulse through the place under the bandage, a clear beat that did not ask, only marked. Pride wanted to flare. I let discipline answer instead. When do I start? You already did. Kale will bring you names. Leora will bring you what she needs to keep men standing while you change their habits. Era will bring you nothing unless asked. If she moves a finger in that hall without your permission, I will remove the impulse. Kale's eyebrow lifted a fraction. Did I hear correctly that I am taking instruction from the new architect of our pantry? You are taking instruction from someone who kept your breakfast from burning. Fair. You do realize you are going to make enemies faster than I can learn their names. I have a map maker. Flattered, he said, sounding like he meant it. Which lock first? The one that hates being watched, I said, and he laughed like a man finally allowed to wear his favorite knife to work. Darius's attention touched my wrist without contact and moved away. A heat disturbance more than a gesture. The command settled in the yard like weather. Men straightened. The ridge's smoke lost interest in us. The fort returned to breathing the way a tired animal does when it knows it has earned the right. Leora passed with a tray of water and salted berries and a hopeful line between her brows. She brushed against my elbow in a way that would look like a misstep to anyone watching, and whispered without moving her mouth. You are safe for now. Be smart anyway. Always, I murmured. She tilted the tray toward me. Eat something you did not kill. I took a berry. It tasted like summer pretending to be generous. Darius watched the exchange with that unreadable steadiness he uses when measuring whether a house has remembered how to be a house. We moved then, the three of us, toward the supply hall's sore door. Kale tapped the hinge with a fingernail and listened like a man reading a heartbeat. I laid my palm on the wood and felt the temperature where heat had tried and failed. The fort smelled like wet ash and work. Above us, the flag snapped in a new wind. Rhea settled against my ribs, not softer, simply done pacing. We are not safe, she reminded me. We are busy, I told her. It feels like the same thing until it doesn't. Fen answered, satisfied and possessive. Mine. Use that like a doorframe, I warned him. If it becomes a chain, I will chew through it. Darius's mouth curved by a degree, as if he had heard thoughts I had not meant to share and approved that they existed. He looked at the hinge, then at me. Make it so that if someone tries to kiss this door again, the house tells me first. It will scream in your voice, I said. Good. Then you will know what I hear and why I answer it. We went to work. The noon bell waited on the far side of the morning. The ridge's smoke thinned and lay down. The house began to learn our angle. And when Kale asked for a list and Leora asked for salt and Era asked for the courtesy due to skill without rank, I answered each with what the day required, because the seat at his right was not a prize. It was an oath, with splinters built in. Night settled over the fort like a hand pressing a fever down. The day's smoke thinned to a memory along the ridge, and the house found its rhythm again. Boots, water, low laughter from men who had earned it. Kale ghosted out of the supply hall with a stack of names written in his head and blood dried in a clean line under his sleeve. Era crossed the yard with Leora at her shoulder, hands steady, chin set, a healer serving under a woman she wanted to outrank. I stood at the edge of the shadow where the yard meets the inner stair and breathed until the taste of wet ash left my mouth. Darius stepped into the open and the air adjusted. He didn't call for me. He looked once toward the stair and the bond did the rest. I moved because pretending I didn't feel the pull would have been a performance I couldn't sustain. Cale fell in behind us a few paces like a shadow enjoying itself. He kept his voice even and his grin low. If you intend to ruin more doors, pace yourself. I'm not made of hinges. You'll replace what needs replacing, I said. You enjoy being necessary. Only when the necessity bites back. Era passed us with a stack of folded cloth and a look that never touched my face. Leora met my eyes as if checking for cracks and let me read the answer. Steady enough to build on. At the stair, Cale angled toward his post. If you need a witness to practicality, I am an insomniac. If not, I have a hinge that wants to learn shame. Go teach it, Darius answered, and the corner of Cale's mouth lifted like a promise. The stairwell kept the heat of the day in its ribs. Our footsteps found the stone seam, the same as every night since the mark burned through the shape of my life. Darius opened his door. The room held clean smoke and a low field of light from 2 braziers. Enough to work by, not enough to blur edges. Close the door. I did. The latch found its home the way a tool returns to the peg where it belongs. He didn't move closer. He set his hands on the back of a chair like a man bracing himself to use words as instruments. Terms, I said before he could ask. I'm not here to be arranged like furniture. Name them. Freedom of movement within the walls. Leora protected without question. Authority over the supply hall and locks with Cale, not under him. If I ask, I get the body count I need, not the one you feel like allotting. And I keep my right to call you wrong in private without fear that you'll break my wrists to make a point. He listened the way the fort listens for weather, measuring what would hold and what would take patching. He nodded once. You have movement until the wall says no. Leora is protected because I need her hands more than I need anyone's pride. Authority over locks is yours. Cale will disagree with you loudly and obey in full. For bodies you ask, I give, and if I refuse, I tell you why. As for calling me wrong, you will do it where walls can't learn bad habits. Your wrists are safe. Your throat is not if you lie. I won't lie, I might bite, make it cost something worth paying. He left the chair and stopped within reach but didn't touch me. The bond hummed, steady and insistent, not urgent. Rhea stood up inside me, not pacing now, not snarling, simply awake and watchful. You have terms, he said. I have one. Name it. Consent. Not theater, not strategy. Consent with teeth. I will not soften. I will not make vows built of comfort. I will take you with possession and certainty. If you want me to stop, you will use the word, and I will stop. If you do not use it, you will not pretend I stole what you refuse to name. What's the word and stop? Simple. I am a simple man. You are the opposite of simple, but your law is clean. He took one step closer. The heat off his body sketched the outline of where his hands might land. My pulse climbed at the same rate the braziers breathed. I kept my voice level, because I refused to let the air be a witness against me. You think consent makes you noble? No. It makes you responsible for your choices. Responsibility makes you dangerous. I prefer you, dangerous. Say what you want, I told him. Say it clean so I can decide whether to allow it. I want you to stand still while I take your wrists and put you where I want you. I want your breath to count with mine until your body stops pretending it forgot the number. I want you to keep your eyes open and meet me when the bond presses you to look away. I want you fierce and present and honest enough to admit you want me not gentle, but certain. I want you to use what I give you as a weapon against the world and not against yourself. And when you are done, I want you to walk out of this room with your spine tall enough that the house remembers who it belongs to. Heat rose under my skin, not blush, not shame, the honest chemistry of desire that hates being named and breathes easier when it is. Rhea's claws flexed once. We don't kneel, she warned. We don't, we choose where to stand. Do you accept? Darius asked, voice as even as if he were asking whether the east tower needed patching. On my terms, I answered, I want no softness, I want no lies. If you take my wrists, you count my breath because I choose it, not because you like the sound of obedience. If I ask for pace, you give it. If I ask for more, you do not turn it into a story about saving me. You hold the wall. I climb. Agreed. Say the word again. Stop. Use it if you want out. If you don't, do not pretend later that you did. I stepped into him as he came into me, a collision built of consent and intent. He turned me to the wall with an efficiency I recognized from battle. No wasted motion, no performance. His hands took my wrists and pinned them above my head. Exact pressure, not cruel. The mark at my throat warmed, heat threading under my sternum until the other heartbeat settled there, as if it had always known the path. Breathe, he told me inside, not a command I could hate. A metronome. In. Hold. Out. The count synchronized faster than my pride wanted. I let it, because refusing the tool out of spite would have been the kind of weakness I despise. His grip adjusted a fraction to correct the angle of my arms. The change made the rest of my body take the hint and align. Rhea bristled and then went still, head high. Do not mistake this stillness for surrender. I won't. We are choosing. Fen pressed along the link like a storm obeying mountain lines. Mine. Quiet. Absolute. Not yours, Rhea answered, but the defiance didn't shake the floor. It turned into a readiness that tasted like pepper and old snow. He leaned close enough for his breath to warm the skin near the bandage, not touching it, inhabiting the space the mark had claimed. The sound of the room narrowed to shared air and the small noises the body makes when it is very honest. The bond rose. It felt like climbing toward weather I had smelled all my life and never stood inside. Tell me what you want, he said, not as a prompt for praise, as an order for data. I want weight. I want certainty. I want pace I can hate and endure. I want your focus so sharp nothing else exists, for as long as I choose. I want to feel that you see me with the same clarity you use for walls and knives and the line of a ridge you intend to hold. I want to make you work to keep your breath. I want to take. And I will never ask you to be gentle. Good. His mouth came close to the skin under my ear, steady and hot, and every muscle in my back tightened and then released because the alternative was shivering, and I refused to give him that pleasure. He didn't kiss me. He held the possibility just long enough to turn it into tension I could use. His thigh braced my weight. His hands kept my wrists. He stayed exactly himself. Disciplined, restrained. Man who believes law matters because the house needs it more than romance. The lack of softness turned into heat, faster than any pretense of tenderness could have. Say the word if you want out, he reminded, and the fairness of it, the refusal to blur accountability, pierced me harder than a caress would have. No. He worked with the bond, not against it, turning the hum into rhythm. I felt his focus like a blade held flat against the inside of me. When my breath stuttered, he waited without easing his grip, a pause that said I could either stand what I'd asked for or use the tool he'd given me. I stood it. The slow, terrible rise came like tide, patient and sure, and I let it come because choosing it was the only way I could live with it later. Rhea growled yes, low and furious, the sound of a wolf refusing shame. Fen answered with a deep, satisfied rumble that didn't ask anything, didn't demand, simply claimed and held. He turned my wrists in his hands until my palms faced the wall, a small change that chained more nerves into the circuit. The room disappeared and became breath, heat, pressure, count. He loosened one hand enough to trace down my forearm to the inside of my elbow, a map reader checking the turn of a road. The bond climbed faster, pulled by a tension that didn't waver. His mouth found the place below the bandage finally, slow and exact, a press of heat that had nothing to do with romance, and everything to do with ownership declared and answered. I didn't hide the sound that tore out of me. I shaped it into what I wanted it to be. Fierce. Not pleading. Mine? Fen poured through the link, iron and winter and law. We choose, Rhea shot back even as she arched into the heat with a snarl that meant living. Say stop if you want out, Darius said again, the steadiness of it both mercy and challenge. No. The surge broke. Not gentle, not polite. It took me like a wave takes a standing body that has braced and accepted the cost. Heartbeats locked. For 3 beats there was no difference between my chest and his, between my want and the certainty he wore like a coat. The link flooded hot and bright and leveled everything I had built against it without erasing me. I held his gaze because I had promised myself I would, and the look there was not triumph. It was recognition of a fact that had existed before either of us had the language to concede it. He didn't soften afterward. He let my wrists go and stepped back half a pace, breathing hard without hiding it. I lowered my arms on my own, because leaning would have made me furious and because I wanted to feel the drag of worn muscles under my skin. You will not name that mercy, I told him. It wasn't, it was law. Good. He didn't touch my face. He reached for my shoulder and turned me so I could take the chair if I wanted it. I didn't. I stayed standing because I had walked into this and would walk out of it. And I would not give the chair the story of catching me after. Terms, he said, voice still low. Repeat yours. Freedom within the walls until the wall says no. Leora protected, always. Authority overlocks with Kale, not under him. Bodies when I ask. My right to call you wrong in private. Agreed. My term remains. Consent is law. If you need out, say the word. If you don't, do not lie to yourself because it is fashionable later. I won't. Conditions, I added. The house holds to the law you wield against me. No man gets to be bold with me because he misread your claim as permission. Anyone who uses your name to make my ground smaller discovers how expensive breath is. He considered the wording like he was checking a gate for rot. Agreed. If anyone leans on my claim to cut your feet out from under you, I take his legs and the house watches. I want authority to order Kale free of his own jokes when he's on my tasks. You have it. He will enjoy the novelty of being useful without commentary for an hour at a time. He already does. A horn lifted from the yard, not alarm. The short, clean note that means a watch is changing, and the ridge has rolled over. The sound threaded the room. He listened without turning his head toward the window. Scouts report the outer fires dying out, he said. They measured us and lost interest. For tonight. For tonight. Your rival in the infirmary will not poison you, he added. She will try to humble you. She will try to outlast you. Those are honest games. Play them as if the roof depends on it. Often it will. If she sets a trap at my door again, I will remove the hinge. Good, try to leave enough wood to teach with. The corner of my mouth moved against my will and to my annoyance. I reached for water and drank, ignoring the tremor in my hand until it remembered itself and got quiet. He watched that too, and did nothing with it. Restraint remained his most brutal form of dominance. You have one more term you want to name, he said. I want to be seen, not praised. Seen. If I spend, I want the house to know what bought their safety, not because I need their thanks, because I need them to spend after me with the same discipline. Done. I show them the ledger, no speeches, numbers. I can live with numbers. Good. Dawn in 2 hours, we walk the wall. Bring Kale for the first half and lose him for the second. I want you alone on the east curve with me when the light breaks. The house needs to learn the picture. You like pictures that teach, and I like outcomes. He banked one brazier with a practiced hand. The other he left to burn low. We didn't touch goodbye. We didn't trade promises. He set his palm flat against the door, as if feeling whether the wood had learned anything from the day. I buckled my belt tighter and found my boots because I intended to stand at dawn without falling into the old instincts of hiding. The corridor outside smelled like wet stone and quiet. Leora was waiting 3 doors down, sitting on a step like a woman who had gotten up too fast and decided to pretend she'd sat there by choice. She looked up and read my face the way she reads a fever. The numbers first, the story second. You're alive, and I am. He break anything, only what needed breaking. Good, it's easier to wrap clean breaks. You have Era. I do. She's efficient when rage scrubs the hands for you. I said we need cloth, not pride. She understood. For now. Keep her hands busy, I plan to. Kale slid out of the darkness like a cat with a bowl to knock over. Is this the part where I salute your endurance or your taste? This is the part where you learn to be somewhere else, I told him. We walked the wall in 2 hours. Bring the list you owe me and the hinge that learned shame. He tipped 2 fingers to his brow. I will dress formally for the occasion in my least offensive grin. Lose it by the east curve. Tragic. He melted back into his seam. Leora squeezed my forearm once and rose. Eat. Then breathe horizontal for a bit. You march better when you pretend you slept. I will. She knew better than to try to hug me. We move as well as we live when the house is watching. In the thin hour before dawn, the fort hovered on the edge of sleep and the ridge forgot to smirk. I met Darius at the stair in the gray before the bell. He didn't ask for sleep. He didn't offer it. We climbed. Kale accompanied us to the first turn with a manner that could almost have been solemn if you hadn't known him. He handed me a folded strip of leather where he'd pressed the sign of each corrected hinge with a nail. Proof. The door screams in 5 places now and bites a wrist in 2. Whoever tries to love it wrong tonight will come to you with a vocabulary lesson. Good work. Tell it to me louder. I haven't been praised since winter and you'll survive. He peeled away at the signal, a shadow rejoining the wall. The house quieted further when he left, as if it had been waiting to see whether he would steal the scene. He didn't. He never steals what he can enjoy watching. We reached the east curve as the sky prepared to break. The world paused. The wind tasted like iron and cold grass. The wall under our boots felt older than any oath either of us had spoken. Stand with me, Darius said, not performative, simple. We took the parapet side by side without touching. He let his arm hang so close that heat bridged the inch between us and still refused to name itself. The bond hummed, low and certain, calmer after choice. Rhea stood still and proud. Fen lay in the seam like a big animal guarding a den without needing to pace. You won't hold my hand, I said. No. Good. Good. A bell at the far tower tested the dawn with a single note. The ridge lay quiet, its smoke finally gone. The house behind us exhaled as if it had counted with us through the night and decided to keep going. You are mine, he said, the words honest as winter, the claim law, not comfort. I am mine, I answered, and I choose this wall. He inclined his head in the smallest acknowledgement a man like him gives to an equal choice. Then we hold it. We stood while the first light cut the ridge and ran along the thorns and settled into the mortar. We didn't soften. We didn't bow. The bond beat, steady in my chest like a second pulse that didn't ask to replace my own, only to drive in the same direction. The house learned the picture. The morning took it into its pages, and the two of us, dominant and defiant, aligned ourselves the way you align a blade and a whetstone, against, together, unavoidable.